Lord of Mysteries, Survival from the Secret Doll Chapter 312 to 321. Chapter 312 Digestion Complete. That Leo you mentioned. Klein's words were cut short by another thunderous roar of lightning intertwining in the sky. The ritual magic hadn't ended. It seemed that as soon as Klein finished chanting the incantation, the lightning in the sky would strike down without hesitation. Seeing this, Klein immediately stopped speaking. Now was not the time to discuss that issue. He changed the subject, saying, "This whole mountain has been struck by that incantation. This is a good opportunity. We should be able to leave here directly." This was the last mission point. The way out of Black Vortex Town was the charred remains of this forest. As long as they crossed this mountain and followed the correct path, they would soon escape Black Vortex Town. Furs nodded. She then seemed to remember someone else and asked Klein, "Did you not see Mr. Hood? Anderson had helped them a lot. If it weren't for this Sequence 5 hunter, they definitely wouldn't have survived so safely in this examination hall." Just those somewhat scalp-numbing monsters alone would have been enough to give Klein and Furs a hard time. No. Klein shook his head, saying with some uncertainty, "His sequence is higher than ours. This place has been destroyed. He should come over if he sees it. He won't encounter any danger." In fact, Anderson had already been directly removed due to his mental corruption dropping too severely after seeing Tang's incomplete mythological creature form, but Klein and Furs didn't know that yet. Furs nodded and didn't say anything like, "Then let's go find him and leave together." What a joke. Their spirituality was almost exhausted. Were they going to find someone or just be a decoration? Not causing trouble for others was the biggest help, and Furs understood this well. "Then let's hurry and go." She wiped the ash from her face. "Let's take this opportunity to leave here quickly. Escaping Black Vortex Town, this should be the last stretch of the journey." However, despite saying they would leave immediately, the two still took a moment to rest and recover a little spirituality, so they wouldn't be defenseless if they encountered danger next. After the swirling lightning above their heads subsided, the two lifted their legs and stepped through the completely burned down forest, treading over cracked, charred ground, walking away from the town. This time, there would be no ghost-blocking walls that Furs had encountered before. That incantation had almost leveled the entire mountain. Klein thought, should he also learn this incantation when he returns? In the future, if he encounters something he can't defeat, he could use this suicidal mutual destruction tactic. Black Vortex Town, underground. The monster, now wearing a monocle again, was wriggling its body, approaching the underground mine shaft located in the core area of Black Vortex Town. Within the winding underground passage was a channel that almost ran through the entire labyrinthine structure. The monster raised an eyebrow and slowly wriggled along this pre-existing path towards the core area of Black Vortex Town. The monster's body, like everything that brazenly approached the core of Black Vortex Town, became increasingly twisted and grotesque the closer it got to the core area. However, in front of a monster skilled at deceiving natural laws and principles, such physiological or mental distortion would have little effect on a naturally born mythological creature. Because they themselves are the embodiment of madness and inhumanity, aren't they? When the monster saw the small black sphere, seemingly attracting all things, suspended in the center of the spacious underground mine shaft, constantly drawing in its surroundings, causing typhoons on the surface, triggering mutations, and gradually turning everyone into monsters, the monster slightly raised an eyebrow. It then saw Tang's historical void image standing beneath the sphere, playing poker with the historical void images belonging to Zarathus and Kotar. His voice was not loud, but exceptionally clear as he said, "It seems you're quite idle." Tang heard the voice and looked over. Upon seeing Amon, who was wearing a monocle, he smiled with great relief. "What, do you want to play too?" He clapped his hands, then, before Zarathus's historical void image could react, he snatched the cards from the other's hand, shuffled them with his own, and directly threw them into the discard pile on the ground. Holding a good hand, Zarathus, who was playing the villain in this game, watched helplessly as his cards were mixed and thrown into the discard pile on the ground. "Unfair, this guy is cheating." Kotar, who was having a bit of trouble gripping the cards with his claws, also simply threw his cards into the deck. The entire demonic wolf lay on the ground, looking at the entrance of the underground cave that Anderson had previously blasted open, and pulled out a hat from the historical void image, placing it on his large head. Zarathus looked at these two completely cheating with bad hands, his mouth twitched. Kotar returned his gaze with a very innocent expression. Blame Amon, why did he come here at this time? He's just a historical void image, what kind of cheat can he do? Zarathus was speechless. He should have just stayed on the South Continent. Tang, you're at least a Sequence 1 Angel King. If you're going to discard cards, discard your own. What's the logic in taking mine and discarding them? Ignoring Zarathus's muttering behind him, Tang leisurely walked up to Amon, looking at this truly unsightly dirty thing. Amon has this hobby. Likes to parasitize on such dirty things. So that thing was placed here by you. Amon pinched his monocle, smiling, looked at Tang in front of him, then bypassed him, observing the unformed black hole that seemed capable of sucking in all things in the world, all things, as if appreciating a work of art. The problem that Bethel and I couldn't solve before, you've done quite well. In Sanyan Harbor, the power that can be drawn from the annual sea prayer ceremony is getting less and less. I suppose that sealed spaceship, that should be the name, the contents inside have been transferred by you, right? Amon finished admiring the unformed black hole that should have been at the bottom of the sea, then looked at Tang again. What's here should just be a projection. The main body of this thing, you put it on the South Continent. This was a guess, but Amon, as the most top-tier decipherer, his guesses were usually spot on. As for why it could only be a guess, and not a conclusion Amon reached after a field investigation. The situation on the South Continent was even more troublesome and complex than on the North Continent. Amon, who was only Sequence 2 and whose main body could only hide and sneak around, might be hung up as a marionette if he wasn't careful. Naturally, he wouldn't send too many avatars to a completely unfavorable environment to die. However, based on what Amon himself saw, heard, and learned from his paranoid brother, since the Baron Empire on the South Continent had retaken Star Plateau, Pass River Valley, and other places, and the sects had re-established control over that area, the living population on the South Continent was decreasing at a visible rate. Currently, only 1 in 10 living people remained on the South Continent, a complete replication of Ruin's Tingan City, and even worse. Most of the South Continent's people had mysteriously disappeared in the long river of history and time, replaced by diviners, marionettes, resurrected corpses, vengeful spirits born after death, and many unique monsters from the underworld. If ordinary people went there without understanding anything, without knowing anything, they probably wouldn't know how they died until their death. Even the best at concealing their presence, the parasites, or the Black Knights, who were skilled in flesh magic, almost unkillable, and possessed various ways of hurting souls, would die inexplicably within a few days on the South Continent. That place was no longer suitable for the living. Currently, the South Continent is largely sealed off. With the obstruction of the stormy sea, ordinary ships from the North Continent and beyonders who can use the spirit world for teleportation find it difficult to reach the South Continent. The nations of the North Continent know very little about the situation on the South Continent, and even Amon, the blasphemer, cannot influence or participate much in the situation there. However, the Death Church's resurgence, the Baron Empire's re-establishment of control over the South Continent, the birth of a new Sequence 1 on the Death Pathway, the Rose School's restraint faction achieving a phased victory and expelling the hedonist faction from the South Continent. Amon was aware of these types of news, whether released intentionally by the person in front of him or accidentally. Also, some strange, clearly extraterrestrial products that shouldn't appear on this planet have also appeared on the South Continent. That thing is very likely to become a channel and medium for those great beings who covet this planet to exert influence on us within the barrier. You know, those great beings always possess many mysticism powers we don't know about and can't deal with. Even something that seems safe can have risks. You should know that. Amon pinched his monocle. So, what kind of cooperation have you reached with some of them? And what are you and my paranoid brother plotting? What are you talking about? I don't understand, Tang shrugged, completely acting like a rogue who had no idea what Amon was saying. I'm just rationally allocating resources and preparing for the coming apocalypse. Amon said, with a hint of amusement, is that really so? Then, how long do you plan to play this childish game? The apocalypse isn't far off, his lips curved upward. If you don't hurry, there will be big problems. For example, revealing some interesting things to Klein Moretti, watching him break down, watching him go mad because of it. That should be very interesting, just like Rosal. Tang lazily lifted his eyelids and glanced at the thing Eamon was parasitizing. He tilted his head and suddenly asked, "You seem to be plotting something too." He also took out a monocle from the historical void that was extremely similar in appearance, style, and material to the one Eamon was wearing, and placed it over his right eye. "Let me guess, are you planning to switch pathways?" They were both old foxes, why were they playing charades with him? Eamon smiled without speaking. Tang clicked his tongue. "Compared to my side, I'm a bit curious. You've already fallen from Sequence 1 and are maintaining this Sequence 2 state. With the apocalypse imminent, I wouldn't spend most of my energy on catching you. We've been fighting for so many years, I believe we still have that much tacit understanding between us. If that's the case, then why do you repeatedly want to return to Sequence 1, and even advance to Sequence 0? The birth of the Lord of the Mysteries requires at least the uniqueness of error, door, and fool, and one Beander characteristic from each of the three pathways. The fool and error are with Tang, and door is with Bethel, but Bethel is in an exiled state. Unless Mr. Door returns, and Eamon forcibly advances Door against Tang, Nicola, and other gods, the three mystic pathways, in their current situation, even with Adam's help, he absolutely cannot covet them. However, I've heard your marionette say this many times, and I think it seems quite fitting here. Eamon said leisurely, everything is both fate and destiny, isn't it? Tisk. Tang couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Indeed, Eamon was truly annoying. He really wanted to hang his main body up as a marionette. Besides, isn't this what you want? Amon's lips curved upward. After all, I imagine the fallen mother goddess probably doesn't want the Lord of the Mysteries to return, does she? There must be a suitable reason, mustn't there? The fallen mother goddess doesn't want the Lord of the Mysteries to return. The best way is to not let Door return. Even if Door returns, it's because the fallen mother goddess hopes to use it as an opportunity to enter the barrier early and retrieve the problematic mother nest located on the west continent. If this goal cannot be achieved, and with the current best candidate for the Lord of the Mysteries, Tang, completely taking the initiative and very likely to advance to the Lord of the Mysteries in the best possible state, the fallen mother goddess will most likely not allow Mr. Door to return to reality. She would delay for as long as possible, and at necessary moments, Mr. Door, who was jointly exiled by the Lord of Storms and the Black Knight Goddess, would very likely receive the full support of the fallen Mother Goddess, making it extremely difficult for Mr. Door to be killed, only sealed. As a pillar of the real world, the fallen Mother Goddess is one of the complete three pillars. As Eamon said earlier, the power of great beings is immeasurable, and the fallen Mother Goddess might not be unable to do this. Therefore, this requires a small opportunity that allows the fallen Mother Goddess to see that the balance can be broken. Tang propped his chin with one hand and glanced at Eamon. Ah, this guy was even more annoying. Suddenly, Tang turned his neck, seemingly looking into the distance. He felt that his potion was completely digested. The three Sequence 1 potions of the Cryptic Servant were completely digested. Chapter 313, 312 Real or Fake. As Furs and Klein were leaving, they saw Anderson, whom they hadn't seen before. The hunter, who seemed a bit frivolous and often claimed to be too unlucky, stood beneath a crooked-necked tree. Hearing footsteps, he raised his head, and after seeing Klein and Furs, he paused slightly, then broke into a smile, greeting them. It was a perfectly normal smile, yet it carried a strange, indescribable sense of eeriness to Klein. "Mr. Hood, are you all right?" Furs was the first to greet Anderson, who walked towards them with that perfectly normal smile on his face. "I thought you would die in that natural disaster. To see you here, I must say your luck is quite good." He then changed the subject. "How did you manage to destroy this forest like this?" "I used a spell from a ritual magic," Furs said earnestly. "It's recorded on page 27 of the book, Basic Applications of Ritual Magic." Klein pulled Furs back in time. "My dear father, even if it's ruin language, don't recite it in this situation. Perhaps the effect of that ritual magic hasn't ended yet, and if you recite it, we'll all get struck." "Oh, a spell, huh?" Anderson looked thoughtful. "In that case, since those things have all been struck down and the abnormality here has been lifted, let's quickly leave this place." Oh, okay. They had no intention of lingering. After all, no one knew if everything on this path was completely dead. If they were to fall into the conceptual pollution dominated by the vortex, again, Furs wasn't sure if reciting that spell again could bring another, shatter the darkness with thunder, to escape that almost certain death situation. Klein flicked a coin, divining whether the journey ahead would be smooth. The result was, as expected, not smooth. In this situation, if they were to run out of here now, it would be a miracle if the path ahead was smooth. After silently complaining to himself, Klein imperceptibly glanced at Anderson, who was leading the way. The smile of this candidate, who claimed to be an unlucky hunter, when they first met, truly made Klein's hairs stand on end. But upon closer inspection, Klein couldn't detect the coldness that seemed to seep out from his bones, as if it had all been his illusion. However, Klein was a diviner, and one who had digested the potion. In such matters, it was better to believe than to disbelieve. Perhaps it was a premonition given to him by his spiritual intuition. After a divination of safety last night, Klein prepared to flick a coin again. He silently chanted in his mind, "This person is not Anderson Hood. This person is not Anderson Hood." Anderson Hood's appearance was indeed too sudden. How did a hunter, who was thrown in a direction completely opposite to Furs and almost thrown into Black Vortex Town with Klein, manage to arrive before Klein, who rode the wind up the mountain, and Furs, who was already on the mountain? Although this could be explained by coincidence, by Anderson encountering other things, or simply by the power of his sequence, Klein felt it shouldn't be that simple. Especially, Klein flicked the coin in his hand, his peripheral vision catching Anderson, who had subtly turned his head at some point. His emerald eyes were emotionless, staring directly at him. It was like staring at prey about to be consumed. Klein resisted the urge to pull out his gun and shoot the hunter in the head. As the coin landed, Anderson smiled and asked, "What's wrong, our diviner? You look terrible. We're about to leave. Is there something wrong with the road ahead?" Klein caught the coin. He looked at Anderson's smile, and his face turned pale. Yes, it was that smile. Anderson's smile felt strangely familiar to Klein, yet he couldn't recall where he had seen it. It was, in a dream. Klein felt a jolt and remembered where he had seen that smile before. In St. Peter's Hospital, after reading a diary left by a secret order member, and after being mentally assaulted by Riel Bieber's divine power, Klein had a series of unsettling dreams. The 3 corpses that were hung and walked in the hospital corridor, and were later confirmed to be dead, had almost identical smiles. Yet, his divination result clearly told him that the person in front of him was indeed Anderson Hood, himself. Divination is not omnipotent, and divination results can be misled. Klein recalled the diviner's code he had summarized. He looked at Anderson, then slowly shook his head at him, feigning composure, showing no particular abnormality. "There is indeed danger ahead, but this danger should be something we can handle." "Is that so?" Anderson withdrew his gaze, the corners of his mouth slightly upturned, looking ahead. Klein's palms were sweating. This guy is not Anderson Hood. Or rather, it was something wearing Anderson Hood's skin. But inside, it was a monster, just like those monsters polluted by the vortex. But why did this monster give him the same feeling as those corpses in his dreams? Was Anderson Hood made into a marionette? Or, was everyone in this entire town already a marionette? At this conjecture, Klein's tense heart relaxed slightly. Yes, this was just an examination hall, after all. For Miskatonic University, which held the diviner pathway, it was perfectly normal to have high-level diviner or high-level marionettist responsible for controlling the NPCs in the examination hall. This was a marionette town in the examination hall, not a marionette town in reality. Why panic? However, despite saying that, Klein still felt the pressure. Furs was clearly not yet aware of the seriousness of the problem. Led by Anderson, they seemed to be walking straight ahead, about to leave the town's boundary, but the surrounding vegetation gradually grew denser. They were about to leave the normal area cleared by the wrinkles and enter the forest polluted by the vortex. Klein's mind was tense. This monster disguised as Anderson wanted to lead them back into the polluted area, wanting to keep them there permanently. They appeared to be walking in a straight line, but if they looked back, their path had already subtly deviated. They were unknowingly heading towards Black Vortex Town, about to return to Black Vortex Town once again. This was the conceptual pollution of the vortex, which would restrain everything in Black Vortex Town, preventing anything from leaving. This thing. Anderson subtly turned sideways as he stepped onto the boundary between the charred and lush areas, his peripheral vision sweeping towards Klein and Furs. Klein's pupils slightly dilated at that strange, implicitly smiling and deeply malicious gaze. He grabbed Furz's shoulder and, in Furz's astonished gaze, pulled her back, preventing the already affected and bewildered Furs from stepping into the polluted area. Moretti, there's something wrong with this Anderson. Hearing this, Anderson couldn't help but turn his head completely. What are you saying? He showed a perfectly normal smile and said to Klein, don't mess around, we're about to leave here. If we keep wasting time here, none of us might be able to leave. Even if you leave here, you won't be able to pass the exam, your record count isn't enough. Klein said quickly, staring at Anderson in front of him, if you leave like this, I don't think Mr. Hood should be able to pass the exam. The smile at the corner of Anderson's mouth dropped slightly. Oh, that. He spread his hands. I'm just here to make up the numbers. Even if I give up, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Of course, no problem. Klein, however, did not continue with Anderson's words, directly admitting the possibility the other party mentioned. Then where's your bracelet? Klein stared at Anderson in front of him, asking word by word, where did your bracelet go? The bracelet with 12 segments was their reliance for confirming their exam progress and leaving the examination hall after entering it. This item could not be lost. The only possibilities for its loss, besides a high-level Beander from the thief pathway attempting to steal it, was another possibility. The holder had died, and the bracelet no longer had a reason to exist. Furs also realized this. She looked at Anderson in front of her, her face filled with shock and surprise, followed by deep horror. Only then did she realize that this was very likely a monster capable of disguising itself as others. Ah, now that you mention it. Anderson looked at his wrist. There was indeed no bracelet made by Nicola's time worm there. Indeed, when Anderson directly faced Tang's mythological creature form and turned into a pile of rotten flesh, the bracelet had already disappeared, so it couldn't possibly be on him. To this, Anderson could only slowly open his mouth and say very sincerely, all right, since you've noticed, I have to admit, I'm not real. No, you should be real. Klein said slowly, one word at a time. To be precise, the real Anderson Hood should have been cleared from the examination hall for unknown reasons. What's active now should be his body. A common problem in the professional ritual magic level exam is that after candidates undergo one exam, their mental state will show obvious signs of decline. Even more so, after they finish a second round exam, they will be directly pulled into St. Peter's Hospital for long-term mental treatment. Although the existence of the mental defense line makes it unlikely for these Beyonders to die directly in the examination hall and turn into monsters, sometimes, the mental and spiritual trauma caused by seeing things that shouldn't be seen is difficult to determine through the judgment of mental value. For example, they saw things that caused physiological discomfort and made them permanently lose the right to donate corneas. This is enough to show that even with certain safety mechanisms, mental trauma sustained within the examination hall can be carried out of it. In contrast to the various sequelae caused by candidates' mental trauma, there are currently no known cases in Klein's information where candidates were sent to St. Peter's Hospital due to missing limbs or broken bones because of this exam. This is enough to prove that when candidates are cleared from the examination hall, their consciousness is cleared. Although the operating principles of these examination halls are unknown, Klein can now be certain that the bodies of these cleared candidates can still move within the examination hall. Perhaps, the bodies of these candidates will gradually become one of the monster NPCs in the examination hall. And this monster in front of them, named Anderson Hood, had memories of the events he experienced after entering this examination hall. Unless they were already familiar with each other before this, they shouldn't have been able to find out the other party's problem through questions and answers. Correct, as expected of our diviner. Anderson widened his eyes, and as he spoke, he couldn't help but clap his hands, expressing his surprise. However, the amusement and malice in this Anderson's eyes were already blatantly and almost unhesitatingly displayed to them. It seems I can't fool you. Should I let you go? He frowned slightly in distress, but soon his furrowed brows relaxed. All right, Anderson sighed, and then Klein and Furs saw the monster wearing Anderson's skin reveal a smile to them. That smile was so brilliant, yet so sinister and bizarre. Behind him, many figures began to appear swaying in the lush forest. One by one, they all bore the appearance of Anderson Hood, all with bizarre smiles, their heads tilted, as if their skulls could fall off at any moment and smash to the ground. Anderson smiled, looking at Klein and Furs, who were vigilantly watching them, the gap at the corners of his mouth stretched to its maximum extent. Since I can't fool you like this, then, look at them. Will they let you leave the center of the vortex? With that, those Andersons rushed towards them with bizarre smiles. Leodoro. Under Klein's gesture, Furs screamed that sentence towards the sky with a tearing heart. As if something strange had been activated, the sky, which had shown no trace of dark clouds just moments ago, now poured down with heavy rain. A gigantic lightning bolt, tearing through and illuminating the entire sky, struck directly at the location of Furs and Klein. Strike down all you damn bastards. Chapter 314, 313 Precognitive Dream. This was a storm made of lightning. The earth was scorched, all the trees were charred, and thick lightning bolts fell densely from the sky, illuminating the entire sky. The soul-deep deterrence made everyone who faced the thunder tremble, unable to walk, only able to collapse and stare blankly as the lightning fell from the sky. The lightning seemed to want to strike all the blasphemers into charcoal. Boom! The earth trembled violently amidst the continuous buzzing from the sky. Klein and Furs had already quickly taken a candle each before the first lightning bolt struck, using a special ritual magic to avoid this scene comparable to a natural disaster. The dark night, prayed for from the Black Night goddess, barely enveloped the two, preventing them from becoming new targets for this spell. These were currently among the few candles that could still be lit after simple salvage. So, these lightning bolts should just strike those monsters. If they strike these monsters, they won't strike them, right? But even so, countless small electric snakes darting around caused Furs and Klein's hair to stand on end, and their clothes carbonized, making them look quite disheveled. After 2 rounds of spells, Furs's HP was barely at a passing 23 points. Klein was a bit better, but only had 31 points. These were high-risk values where a slight mistake could lead to being cleared from the examination. Even under the protection of ritual magic, they had to quickly leave this lightning-bathed area. The identical Anderson Hoods behind them were the main targets of this divine punishment like baptism. Lightning bolts from the sky struck down one after another as if free, as if they had a deep hatred for those monsters, wishing to whip their corpses multiple times after killing them. Klein seemed to hear something roar, but the sound was too distant, too ethereal. He just assumed he had been listening to the lightning strike for too long and was having hallucinations. In fact, after mental value drops to a certain level, auditory and visual hallucinations are highly likely to occur. Pedigree and Cornley had explained this to Klein. In the examination, numerical mental value represents a Beander's mental stability. Those with high stability are less likely to lose control and generally won't experience auditory or visual hallucinations. But as mental value decreases, Beyonders will constantly experience various mental problems. They will see things they normally can't, hear malicious voices. Don't pay attention to those things, even if they are related to you. Even with the lightning clearing the way, many of those Anderson Hoods were still approaching them. They crawled on all fours, or ran quickly. Their faces gradually melted under the lightning's glow, with countless fleshy buds growing out, blurring their facial contours, and their bodies also changed in the flickering light of the lightning. Their faces were deforming, their bodies were deforming, and they were still learning and imitating Klein and Furs's previous movements and thought patterns. Although these monsters did not find Klein and Furs, who were secretly protected by the power of the Black Knight, this shocking scene alone was enough to cause a significant drop in their mental values. At this time, Furs's mental value was 41 points, and Klein's was 37 points, both approaching the 20 mark. These things are imitating us. Furs took a moment to look back, and the sight made her scalp tingle. She saw several forces, with twisted, grotesque faces and eerie, fixed smiles, struck by lightning and charred, collapsing to the ground, twitching and dying. Imagine seeing someone who looks exactly like you die right in front of you. Even if you know it's just a monster disguised as you, it still makes your mood a bit strange. A bit of phantom limb pain. Furs felt her entire body go numb. It's a bit like the Beander ability of the Seer Pathway Sequence 6. Klein quickly communicated with Furs beside him while protecting the candle in his hand. The Seer Pathways Sequence 6 a potion name is Faceless. A Faceless possesses excellent disguise abilities and is a master of imitation in this regard. The Beander ability of this sequence can help a Beander quickly adjust their height, appearance, posture, and possess more excellent imitation abilities and disguise techniques. A Faceless blended into a crowd is almost impossible to distinguish. After taking over someone else's face, silently disguising themselves as another and lurking is something a qualified Faceless is extremely good at. When a Faceless has truly understood the specific situation of the person being disguised, perhaps only an excellent spectator can find traces of the Faceless's presence in the subtle details. Klein took a moment to tell Furs, we should try not to separate. If we do, and we encounter. Rumble. A lightning bolt exploded in the sky, striking directly in front of Klein and Furs. The candles in their hands, symbolizing mystery, were completely blown out by the current brought by the lightning. The two instantly lost the protection of the mystic power. The Kleins, forces, and Andersons behind them all looked over, then smiled and rapidly approached them. The closer they got, the more these Kleins and forces resembled their faces, expressions, and postures. These things were now almost identical replicas of them. Run! Klein and Furs took off running, trying to get ahead of the monsters and leave the area covered by the vortex of Black Vortex Town. But the lightning falling from the sky originally did not distinguish between friend and foe. After losing the protection of the mystic, Klein and Furs also became targets of the lightning. Thus, after narrowly dodging several dangerously close lightning bolts that would have roasted them to a crisp, they naturally became separated in the increasingly dense lightning storm. The lightning falling from the sky was wild and tyrannical. Compared to the power of the spell Furs used last time, this time the spell's effect was clearly more terrifying. The dense, continuous lightning in the sky was like awakened beasts, striking down indiscriminately, terrifying beyond compare. Klein and Furs fled separately. They had to use rocks, dead trees, and other monsters to block the lightning attacks. Even though the lightning's main targets were still the more numerous monsters, it still made Klein and Furs feel tricky and breathless. Finally, when Klein struggled out of the edge of the lightning storm, all his clothes and exposed skin were charred black, making him look extremely disheveled. Klein's HP was precariously stuck at the dangerous and fatal limit of 21. He was just 1 point away from being cleared from the examination, and he wondered how many points he would get if he hadn't escaped. Of course, Klein wasn't struck dead on the spot and just barely made it, perhaps because he was the yellow-black king who wields good luck. Klein coughed a few times. He saw Furs, also charred black, had already climbed out of the dense lightning storm before him. Moretti, cough, you're out too. Furs's HP and mental value were likely almost at rock bottom, making her look incredibly disheveled. She smiled at Klein with some difficulty. Ahead is normal forest. We should be able to leave soon. Bang. Before Furs could finish speaking, a bullet from the revolver Klein had somehow acquired in his hand struck Furs directly in the forehead as she struggled to approach him. Furs looked at Klein in disbelief. Why? Before she could finish, she was met with a barrage of several more bullets. Bullets pierced through Furs's body, splattering blood. Furs slowly fell. Her smile and bewildered expression hadn't had time to fully change before Klein killed her on the spot. Klein panted heavily several times before walking over and kicking Furs's body. Seeing no movement, he let out a soft sigh. The moment he saw Furs, Klein felt an inexplicable sense of déjà vu. The person in front of him wasn't Furs, it was a monster disguised as Furs Wall, just like the Anderson hoods who had appeared before them earlier. And this feeling, this sense of déjà vu. Klein looked at his slightly trembling hand, pursed his lips, and vaguely clenched his fist. He, it seemed, had always. For some reason, Klein felt as if he had always been in this kind of environment. Was it because his mental value had dropped too severely, causing numerous hallucinations, and he was about to lose control? Inside the Euclidean space, Nicola nudged Tang, who was sleeping soundly in the rocking chair. The Black Vortex Town examination is closing, and we're about to land in the real world, Tang. Tang grumbled a few times when nudged, pulled the blanket over his face. Nicola nudged Tang again, and Tang mumbled, his hair looking like it had exploded, and he threw off the blanket from his face and sat up. Tang, still groggy, looked at the helpless Nicola. After a few seconds, having obtained the information he wanted from the spirit world, he slowly said, "Ah, it's already over. The one who cleared it in the end, it's just Klein, which is reasonable." He squinted and sat up from the rocking chair, holding a pillow he'd gotten from somewhere, his head drooping, clearly still not fully awake. One wondered where a sequence 1 Angel King got so much sleep. He swayed in the rocking chair until Nicola's smile almost faltered and he was about to sigh and leave. Then Tang finally stood up from the rocking chair. "My cryptic servant potion has been completely digested." His hair was messy, and he scratched his face, realizing there were still indentations from sleeping soundly. He rubbed his face, then snapped his fingers, granting his wish to make his hair and the red marks on his face disappear. After doing all this, Tang briefly surveyed the situation in the Euclidean space and looked at the few remaining examination light clusters that were still ongoing, and, perhaps because of this, I had a very interesting dream. A dream? Nicola looked at Tang, his brow slightly furrowed. A symbolic dream. For beyonders at this level, especially those with some authority in the field of divination and prophecy, precognitive dreams are one of the ways they obtain information from the spirit world. However, some precognitive dreams cannot be obtained through ordinary divination and prophecy methods. For example, dreams involving deep future or many great existences. Yes. Tang closed his eyes, his lips curving slightly into an approachable, harmless smile. I dreamed of the moment of this world's end. The stars return to their positions, the old ones have arrived. Dreams involving many high-dimensional overseers are bound to be vague. Even he couldn't remember the specific content of the dream he had. This dream might have been influenced by the Lord of the Mysteries, Fate Beacon, Symbolism and the Supreme One's, Fate, influence. But I saw a few people. Nicola was a bit surprised. Yes, but that's not quite accurate. Tang pulled a mirror from the historical void. He gently flicked the mirror in his hand, and the mirror's surface instantly rippled like water. "Arodes, get ready, your great master might be coming for you soon." After casually tossing the mirror back into the historical mist, he looked at Nicola, who was waiting for him to continue, and said with a smile. "Describing it as a few people probably isn't enough to explain what I saw. If I were to describe it using my senses, it should be a kind of disgusting stitched-together monster. A stitched-together monster of several people in terms of thoughts, spirit, and soul. Too many things were mixed in, causing the main body to become chaotic and unclear, but that thing had a temperament I really disliked. As I said before, I saw the symbol of destruction on that thing. The fourth pillar." Nicola looked at Tang, a hint of solemnity appearing between his brows. "You dreamed of the birth of the fourth pillar." This was not a good omen. From a broad symbolic interpretation of this precognitive dream, it should be this. Tang looked at the few unfinished examination rooms, tilted his head, and pondered, "But one thing I don't understand is that the Black Knight, Death, and Warrior pathways should all end up in the Black Knight goddess's hands, the Red Priest should be in our hands in the future, and the Witch in Triss's hands. Who put all these things together?" This was not very reasonable. "So, Nicola, go to Intis later and check it out." He slowly said, "The dream is very vague, but it should have some connection with Intis. Didn't a marionette find a strange child there before? Find an opportunity to replace everyone around that child with marionettes or your avatars to see what's going on." As a top diviner, Tang had a premonition that the fourth pillar in Intis, and the strange child with the feeling of a fated one, that the marionettes discovered not long ago, were connected. Especially, the birth of the fourth pillar. A very strange precognitive dream, a very strange story direction. This future should not conform to the development path of fate. Tang felt he had to ask, future, about this question. He always felt that this question was inextricably linked to the Ring of Destiny and the high-dimensional Overseer. Perhaps it was also related to the appearance of Triss Chick, this strange, reborn person. Chapter 315, 314 End. Recalling the already blurry dream, Tang smacked his lips, took a glass of happy fat water from the historical mist, took a sip with a straw, and then looked towards the East Continent through Euclidean space. Arrange for Little Sun to join the Tarot Club. Oh, right, this one should be given to Klein. He's not cunning, too innocent, and a bit naive. It makes me want to bully him, just let Klein train him. At this point, Tang sighed again. This position was truly difficult to hold. To be honest, wasn't his initial intention to slack off, lie flat, and quietly wait for the Lord of the Mysteries to save the world? Why did it turn out like this? Nicola also looked towards the East Continent, following Tang's gaze. Mr. Error reached out and pressed down his black top hat. The mother cards are almost ready as well. Tang nodded indifferently. I'll head back first, tidy up a bit, and then go to the Stormy Sea in a few days to open the mausoleum. He would go with Owen to suppress the coffin lid of his grandfather first, and then retrieve the uniqueness of death and the other half of his father's soul. All right, Nicola nodded. I will arrange the rest. All right, then I'll trouble you with the rest. Bye-bye. With that, Tang's figure gradually disappeared, leaving Euclidean space. Nicola watched Tang leave, then turned his gaze back to the projection of Tingen City in Euclidean space. Tingen City, St. Peter's Hospital, basement level 1. When Klein broke out of the cocoon and fell from the air onto the soft liquid, he seemed a bit disoriented. Medical staff quickly came forward, and under Klein's surprised and helpless gaze, they swiftly and professionally checked his physical condition. While following the doctor's instructions to lift his legs and clench his hands, Klein looked around. He found it to be a very large room, without windows, painted white, and it looked quite normal. The thing he had just emerged from was a strange light cocoon suspended in midair. The light cocoon had shriveled after Klein left it, and inside was a strange transparent liquid. This was why Klein hadn't been injured when he fell from over a meter high. After flowing out of the light cocoon and protecting Klein, this strange, colorless, and odorless transparent liquid was quickly absorbed by the ground, leaving nothing behind. Klein was not the only one here, there were many other light cocoons suspended in this remarkably large room. Some cocoons were still hanging from the ceiling, while others had already been lowered, with people struggling to climb out, vomiting, and being quickly led away by medical staff. Klein looked around, his still sluggish brain taking a moment to realize. He shouldn't be at Tingen University. St. Peter's Hospital, basement level 1. Miskatonic has rented this floor for the past few days to monitor the mental state of you examinees. This way, if any examinee has a mental problem when they log out of the examination hall, you will quickly be taken by St. Peter's for emergency treatment. The young nurse who was examining him explained. After all, St. Peter's has the most professional doctors for both physiological and mental issues. No major problems, just a moment, Mr. Moretti, you still need to be assessed by our psychologist for your mental state. If there are no major issues, you can sign here and leave. After Klein's brief examination, a psychiatrist-psychologist quickly came to assess Klein, confirming whether his mental state required hospitalization for treatment. After all, there were previous cases of people going mad while taking this exam, so the psychiatrists at St. Peter's were quite experienced and handled these matters without any hesitation. After completing a series of psychological assessments, the psychiatrist-psychologist put a checkmark on Klein's diagnosis form. Well, based on this data, and assuming your potion has been fully digested as you said, your mental state should not have any major problems. You just need to be a little careful from now on. You might experience some allergic reactions during this period, where seeing something will involuntarily trigger a series of associations. For example, seeing people might make you think of monsters. After all, from the information transmitted by Miskatonic, your mental value has dropped severely. This is a normal reaction, and it will naturally get better after some time. Okay, thank you. Klein watched the psychiatrist go to perform psychological diagnoses for others emerging from the suspended light cocoons, and then Pedigree arrived. How are you? You look awful. Pedigree asked with concern. Nothing serious, just that my mental value dropped too severely, with some after effects. Klein gave a wry smile, then asked, how is Cornley? How is he doing? Pedigree moved his lips strangely. Oh, Cornley, he came out much earlier. Klein heard this. Looks like the situation isn't good. Pedigree. Yeah, he failed again. Subsequently, according to Pedigree's description, Cornley encountered a statue called Great Black Buddha Mother in the examination hall this time. It was said that this statue represented the god of curses and god of malice. The statue's face could not be seen, and although it was trapped in a village, anyone whose name it knew would be cursed. Cornley initially didn't understand the rules and, after the Great Black Buddha Mother, the major boss of the instance, learned his name, it immediately performed an ultra-long-range kowtow curse kill. Without even a chance to resist, red and white splattered everywhere, brain matter and flesh gushed out, and he was instantly GG, cleared from the examination hall. Klein, having heard all this, that sounds pretty miserable. Pedigree affirmed, yes, it is very miserable. Cornley was still in a daze, wanting to kowtow 2 more times. He wasn't sure whether he should kowtow to that person or to the Great Black Buddha Mother. It was the evening of August 8th. The flow of time inside and outside the examination hall seemed to be unequal. Klein had stayed in Black Vortex Town for 4 or 5 days, but only 1 day had passed outside. Pedigree stayed at St. Peter's, watching the still somewhat dazed Cornley, while Klein returned directly to 32 Red Rose Street, and then, with Dunn's permission, prepared to return to the apartment at 47 Gold Rose Street to meet Melissa and Benson. The second round of examinations concluded here. The specific scores and final comprehensive scores still needed some time for Miskatonic to compile and review. The exam results will be out in 2 days. You can relax these 2 days, Klein, you don't need to worry too much about safety now. We also took this opportunity to report relevant issues to Miskatonic. That one is watching here now, so at least on the surface, those guys hiding in Tingen City won't make a move against us. Okay, Captain. Ah, right. Just as Klein was about to step out of the captain's office door, Dunn called out from behind him again, tomorrow night, Tingen University is hosting a gathering for examinees. If you want to attend, you can go to Tingen University tomorrow night to check it out. Okay. Klein nodded once more, but when he tried to leave again, Dunn, behind him, called out to him again. Captain, did you forget something else? Klein's mouth twitched as he turned his head to look at Dunn Smith, who seemed to have a rather poor memory. Nothing, just wanted to tell you not to worry about the exam results. Even if you don't pass, you can take it again next February. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Dunn smiled at Klein, winked playfully, and said, when I took this exam, I didn't close my eyes for a single night from the time I finished until the results came out. Klein paused slightly, then smiled. Captain, you are sleepless. Why would you close your eyes at night? However, regarding Dunn's well-being, Klein sincerely said, thank you, Captain, for your comforting words as someone who has been through it. Haha, all right, young man, go home and spend time with your family. You make it sound like I'm 70 or 80. Dunn jokingly scolded Klein, and Klein opened the office door. This time, he walked out of the office and was not called back by Dunn again. Having a rare moment of leisure, Klein had a lively dinner with Melissa and Benson, who he happened to meet, in the apartment on the 2nd floor of 47 Gold Rose Street. Afterward, Klein returned to his bedroom, then walked 4 steps backward, entering gray mist. In the mysterious space above gray mist, Klein, who should have recalled something due to the sterilizing and insecticidal effect of the gray mist, had his mind vaguely recall something, only for it to be stolen by several time worms with 12 segments hiding in the dark, making these imminent memories disappear once again. It was not yet time. Mr. Error, seated at the head of the bronze long table, slightly adjusted his black silk top hat as he looked at the reflection of Fool Klein in the water mirror beneath his seat. Then, his pale eyes looked around at the deep red stars, and he casually extended a slender finger, pointing at a deep red star from a distance, making it enlarge and sink into the water mirror beneath his feet, appearing in the magnificent palace on the reverse side. East Continent, Silver City. Below the twin towers of the 6-member council, Gale Bray, the former chief of Silver City, pushed open the heavy black iron double doors. Inside the doors was soft sunlight. Even though it was a lightless environment, illuminated only by lightning, this dark and cramped underground room, where sealed artifacts were stored, contained a warmth that almost all citizens of Silver City would never see in their lifetimes. Sitting in the corner of the room was Nicholas Flamel, reading a newspaper and drinking tea. Seeing someone push open the door, he politely tipped his hat in greeting. Good afternoon, Mr. Bray. Good afternoon, Flamel. With that, Galbraith looked at the sealed artifact in the center of the room. It was Silver City's, 0 level, or rather, God-level sealed artifact, gift of the earth, formed from the corpse of the deceased goddess of harvest, Umbella. It was a massive tree trunk, appearing to require 3 or 4 people to embrace it, standing 7 or 8 meters tall. Most of its bark had fallen off, and the remaining bark was a dead, withered grayish-brown, looking utterly incapable of being alive. However, compared to the parts that looked like a tree, the exposed wood facing Nicholas and Galbraith had some protrusions and depressions. This strange structure outlined a blurred female figure with no legs, using branches growing from the trunk as arms, a severely distorted face, and 2 large crimson flowers serving as eyes. The figure seemed to sense someone entering the room. Galbraith seemed to hear a low, crying voice whispering, "Mama." "Yes, I am your mother." Nicola nodded. On the round table in front of him lay a card. A mother card, depicting a female version of Rosal the Great, wearing maternity clothes, with a bulging belly, and radiating maternal glory. With the indistinct call from Gift of the Earth, the expression of the maternal female Rosal the Great on the tarot card grew even softer. This power caused Gift of the Earth to show signs of becoming more vibrant, but soon the vibrant part of Gift of the Earth disappeared again. Nicola, as if performing magic, took out another mother card from his pocket, also engraved with the image of the female Rosal the Great, and placed the item he had just stolen from Gift of the Earth into it. Galbraith, observing this mother card production line, was silent for a moment before asking, "Do we really have to send that child?" After finishing, Nicola unhurriedly put the new, but still not very lively, mother card into his pocket. He glanced at Galbraith and asked with a smile, "Don't you want Silver City to leave the forsaken land of the gods very much?" Galbraith fell silent again, then asked in a low voice, "Tang should be able to do this." After advancing to sequence 1, Tang, with his authority over observation in space, should be able to perform the corresponding grafting, directly grafting people out. If he wanted to do it, he would have done it already. Nicola sighed, calmly looking at this colleague with whom he had worked for a millennium. "Gale, this isn't even a sacrifice, it's just sending a child to Source Castle. Tang won't actually eat him. Moreover, if Adam were to do this, how many people do you think would die? Furthermore, in the past 1,000 years, the population and living environment of Silver City would only decrease and become even harsher. I think you should understand this." Nicola took off his hat and looked at Gift of the Earth in the center of the room. Galbraith also looked at the sealed artifact in the center of the room. He then took a deep look at Nicola, turned, and left. "I will inform this generation's chief." Chapter 316, 315 Cherish Life. Tingen City, Tingen University. Many candles and ore lamps floated in midair, quietly suspended beneath the black velvet curtain of the sky. A scarlet moon hung in the sky, dotted with stars, making the night sky, illuminated by candlelight and firelight, exceptionally strange. Tingen University was particularly lively tonight. Klein, wearing the black tailcoat Benson bought him for his graduation ceremony and a semi-tall silk top hat, stepped solemnly through the gate of Tingen University, entering a university that looked normal from the outside but, once inside, revealed a world completely different from the outside. Outside the gate was an ordinary city, inside was the world of Beyonders. Tingen University already had quite a few people. Someone had set up a long row of stalls at the entrance of Tingen University, and a fragrance wafted through the air. Klein even saw many strangely shaped, rather peculiar little things being held in people's hands, sprinkled with cumin powder, and being gnawed on. They seemed to be some spiritual creatures and sea monsters from the ocean. Who is so good at business, are they not afraid of death? On this snack street, which was rare even in the Beyonder world, Klein also saw Beyonders from other churches. Eternal Blazing Sun, Lord of Storms. These official Beyonders all had accessories, more or less, that marked their identity. Klein also had the Black Knight Sacred Radiance from the Black Knight Church, which was now pinned to his chest, shimmering with a faint scarlet moon glow under the illumination of the light. Klein, who hadn't eaten much dinner, left the snack street at the entrance of Tingen University. He had barely walked 2 steps, thinking he hadn't brought much money and wondering how much these things cost, when he saw Tang brush past him. For some reason, Tang's expression looked very tired, as if he hadn't slept well for several days. Even on the snack street, he swayed as if he had lost his soul, looking like he was about to collapse and fall asleep directly. Tang. Klein called out to the dazed Tang and asked with concern, "What's wrong? Haven't you been sleeping well lately?" "Ah, Klein." Tang squinted, scratched his head, and smiled, "Nothing much, just had a nightmare 2 days ago, feeling a bit uncomfortable." "Nightmare?" Klein's expression shifted slightly, a little curious. "What kind of nightmare?" It had such a strong lingering effect. "It's nothing, really," Tang said slowly, seemingly recalling his dream, his expression distant. "I just dreamt of a self-destructive bear child who had many things he shouldn't have at his age, and then he got provoked and, without a word, wanted the world to be buried with him or something. Perhaps I've been reading too many novels by Rosal the Great lately." Sigh. "Sure enough, I shouldn't read romance novels like, Overbearing King Falls in Love with Me, before bed." "Alright, it was from reading novels. But, Klein, your range of interests is truly wide. He even reads novels like that. By the way, Emperor, how much junk have you stuffed into this world?" Tang nodded, praising himself. He had also recommended novels like, Killing Husband to Prove the Tao, Reborn Young Miss, Cultivation in Another World, Superpowered Princess, and, The Regent's Beloved, to the Goddess. And indeed, the goddess's humanity had actually increased a bit. Sure enough, knowledge is power. I just don't know where the system pulled such a large chunk from the knowledge wilderness. Right. Tang nodded in agreement. I think so too. It's always good to read more, even books just for passing the time. Oh, by the way, Klein, how were your exam results? Were they smooth? They should be alright. The exam results hadn't come out yet, and Klein had no intention of being overconfident. That's very good then. At least for those who met the exam requirements, the possibility of passing is very high. As he spoke, Tang yawned again. "Ah, by the way, are you here for tonight's party?" Tingen University has many Beyonders tonight, but with that person watching, there shouldn't be any safety concerns. This was equivalent to gathering people from all corners of the world, making it an excellent place for exchanging information, getting to know each other, and conducting transactions. Moreover, under the gaze of Nicholas Flamel, a Sequence 1 Angel King, official Beyonders would also show this error some respect. As long as things didn't get too out of hand, those wild Beyonders would be fine. "I have something to do, I'll be leaving first. Oh, by the way, Klein, can you dance ballroom dance?" Tang suddenly asked at the end. Ballroom dance. Klein was a bit speechless. He pondered for a moment, then shook his head. "I've seen others dance, but I can't." "Alright, that's a pity." Tang pointed in the opposite direction from where the other examinees were heading. "There's a ball over there. If you have time, you can come and see it. I believe it will be an eye-opener for you." "Okay, if I have time, I'll go and see." Klein agreed. Tang nodded and walked towards the direction of the ball. Klein's spiritual perception stirred, and just as he was about to say something, a voice came from behind him. "Moretti." Klein turned around and saw Fur's Wall, looking astonished. The great writer was holding some things at the entrance of Tingen University. "Good evening, Miss Wall." After walking a few steps, the originally empty scene before Tang merged with another scene not far away. He opened the double stone doors, carved with strange reliefs and patterns, and entered the grand hall. The marble floor of the hall was now covered with a bright red carpet. Chandeliers hanging from the ceiling emitted warm, fiery light, making the hall resplendent and dazzling. Melodious instrument tunes continuously played in the hall. Pairs of men and women, old and young, danced on the bright red carpet, under the warm light of the chandeliers, and to the melodious tunes, performing various ballroom dances from the North Continent nations. Each pair danced different steps, yet they were surprisingly in perfect sync with the music's melody. No pair collided with another, everyone was orderly, like a puppet show that had been rehearsed for a long time, now in its most splendid performance. After Tang entered the hall, the double stone doors carved with strange reliefs and patterns silently closed behind him. Those immersed in the music and melody also seemed not to notice anyone entering the hall. They continued to dance their respective dances, lost in themselves, as if burning their lives away. Tang didn't pay attention to these people either. Along the edge of the dance floor, Tang, with a somewhat listless expression, strolled to the area where food and drinks were placed. Without much hesitation, he picked up a cream cake that had been pre-cut and placed on the table, as if prepared for him, and used a fork to scoop it into his mouth. You didn't sleep well. Owen appeared from nowhere, looking at his younger brother's half-dead appearance with some surprise. A sequence 1 Beander, surely not this lifeless. Yeah, I asked some questions, and then I was so anxious I couldn't sleep all night. Tang's somewhat unfocused eyes slightly sharpened. After wolfing down the cream cake in his hand, he pulled out a napkin from the historical mist, calmly wiped the cake crumbs from the corner of his mouth, and then looked at Owen. Aren't you going to dance or something? It's rare to have such a good opportunity. He pursed his lips, gesturing for Owen to look at the handsome men and beautiful women on the dance floor. Owen pointed at the things on the dance floor, his mouth twitching. You wouldn't, would you? I'm your biological brother, we're brothers. Owen slapped Tang's shoulder, indicating, are you okay? Tang stumbled from the slap, his somewhat listless expression indicating that he was still in a half-dead, Schrödinger-like state, and he should not be disturbed while emptying his mind. Owen sighed and put another piece of cream cake in Tang's hand. Tang didn't refuse. He held the cream cake, but instead of putting it directly into his mouth, he used his fork to poke the cream cake while watching the grand ball before him. Every man and woman dancing on the dance floor, at a rough glance, seemed fine. Everyone was so harmonious, happy, pure, with the most amiable smiles on their faces. Some were Beyonders, some were not. Some were residents of Tingan City, others were residents of other cities in Ruin Kingdom. Some had the bloodline of giants, some had the bloodline of sea monsters. They all looked different, yet at a certain moment, they presented the illusion of being uniformly alike. But if there were high-sequence Beyonders present, with their powerful spirituality and divine power, they might be able to see through the illusion and perceive many things ordinary people couldn't, and then go mad. For example, a man's hand resting on a woman's waist suddenly detached during a spinning dance, and the cleanly severed hand stuck to the woman's waist, gradually merging with her body. The kissing man and woman had separated, but their lips had detached from their faces, still performing the kissing motion, stuck together. Their bodies also gradually combined with the connection of their lips, transforming from two people into one, both male and female, both yin and yang. Or, for instance, two pairs exchanged their dance partners, but their method of exchange involved their heads detaching from their necks and perfectly reattaching to another person's body, thus swapping bodies, as if simultaneously undergoing the most perfect head transplant surgery. Eyes, nose, mouth, hair, torso, internal organs, blood vessels, blood, spiritual bodies and spirituality, Beander characteristics and Beander powers, everyone on this dance floor was constantly reorganizing, grafting, and stitching. The smile on everyone's face was so bright, yet their bodies were constantly exchanging and reassembling in one dance after another. Everyone's spiritual body threads floated towards the seemingly boundless sky. Their every piece of flesh and every spiritual body were independent, yet they were all marionettes that a marionettist could play with at will. A cryptic servant could evoke the spiritual body threads of things that once existed, but at this level of cryptic servant, they still couldn't manipulate with such precision, or rather, it was impossible to manipulate every piece of flesh and every trace of spirituality within all marionettes with such precision. The Supreme One and Cryptic Servant do not belong to mutually intersecting, interchangeable sequence pathways. Therefore, when these two pathways intersect, they can produce many very strange, horrifying, and terrifying Beander abilities. Observing every piece of flesh, precisely manipulating every spiritual body thread, and using the Cryptic Servant's grafting ability to graft different body parts of different marionettes together to form a brand new person. This is the most terrifying faceless. A marionette under this kind of grafting is essentially still a whole, it's just that every piece of flesh is not on its own body. One's own flesh is on someone else's body, and someone else's flesh appears on one's own body. Every piece of their flesh is still alive. When Beander characteristics are not aggregated and detached from a Beander, they merge with the Beander's body in a dispersed form. Therefore, under the effect of the Cryptic Servant's grafting authority, a marionette can obtain various Beander abilities of different levels, sequences, and pathways. And for an observer, a person's spiritual body also has many gaps. The cryptic servant's grafting can also play a role. This is truly a physical, mental, spiritual, and fated stitched monster. Tang exclaimed, and Owen rubbed the goosebumps on his arms, feeling a little unnerved. Honestly, he was already somewhat numb to his younger brother's twisted sense of humor and imagination. Are cryptic servants all this sinister? Cherish life, stay away from cryptic servants. At sea, the pirate, with his distinctive wide chin, dark green eyes, and brown hair tied into an ancient warrior's topknot at the back of his head, stood in place, his face twisted and ferocious. The young man in front of him lazily lifted his arm. On his arm, countless flesh sprouts were surging, and a brand new arm was growing outwards, using his arm as a base. So, Captain, why did you have to point that out? The young man, who was the first mate of this pirate ship, smiled as he looked at the 30-something-year-old man before him, who was terrified but forcefully suppressing his inner fear as he confronted him. Wouldn't it be better to just quietly pretend you didn't know anything? Wouldn't it be better to just quietly continue your mission? Why listen to the warnings of some insignificant people, Captain? The captain, the owner of this ship and one of the 7 pirate generals, Rear Admiral Keelingus, raised his hand, his eyes wide with fury. In his hand, the wriggling hunger appeared. The young man sighed. I told you not to go to the Hermit Order of Twilight. Hermes, too, why didn't he say anything earlier, or later, but chose this moment to tell you such a thing? Although he said that, a characteristic smile appeared on the young man's lips again. Who exactly are you? Keelingus's hand, covered by the wriggling hunger, trembled slightly as he asked, putting on a brave front but inwardly fearful. Me. The young man seemed to be thinking, then as if he remembered something, he said with amusement. How about you call me Alger Wilson? Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Chapter 317, 316 Violent Sea. The Violent Sea is the ocean separating the North Continent and the South Continent. At the end of the Fourth Epoch, Death and the original witch launched the Pale Calamity together, fighting against the 7 gods. Ultimately, they were defeated by the 7 gods and perished in the waters between the North and South Continent. Thereafter, facing death and defeat, Death stirred up storms on the sea before his demise, creating an insurmountable barrier between the North and South Continent. From then on, this sea, known as the Violent Sea, became famous for its numerous natural disasters and countless dangerous currents, making navigation between the North and South Continent impossible. Rosal the Great once attempted to expand the shipping routes between the North and South Continent, but until Rosal the Great's death, this route remained impassable. Nowadays, only a few people from the South Continent venture onto the North Continent for various profound reasons. Rumor has it that the Violent Sea hides a secret treasure left by Death. However, even the bounty hunters of the 5 seas, facing the unpredictable weather and treacherous conditions of the Violent Sea, hardly dare to venture into it to search for the treasure, said to be left by Death, containing the most valuable items in his possession. The dark sky reflected on the turbulent sea, a world of pure black where only lightning streaking across the sky illuminated this dark, violent sea. The turbulent waters formed countless dark vortexes. As soon as a ship approached these constantly spinning downward vortexes, both people and ship would be swallowed by the icy, biting seawater, leaving nothing behind. To the islanders living in the waters surrounding the Violent Sea, this sea, perpetually shrouded in gloomy weather and almost devoid of light, was like Death's domain. Any fishing boats approaching the Violent Sea would be mercilessly swallowed by the ocean, with no chance of survival. Over time, no traces of human activity could be seen in this sea anymore. However, today, uninvited guests arrived. For those with bathyphobia, this is not a good place. Facing a bottomless abyss, one becomes so fearful and anxious that they cannot breathe. Staying in this environment for a few days, one would probably fall ill even without psychological treatment. Tang looked up at the sky of the Violent Sea, which was completely indiscernible. If a prison were built here, just thinking about it is interesting. Ever since the professional ritual magic level test in Tingan City concluded, Tang had tidied up his various pieces of equipment, discarding what needed to be discarded and replenishing what needed to be replenished. After dawdling for a few days, he arrived at the Violent Sea, which was said to have formed after Death's demise, near the core area of the sea. Next, He had to fulfill the agreement with the Black Knight goddess, reclaim half of Azik Eggers' soul, take the death pathway's uniqueness, suppress the eternal darkness river's tributary, and ensure Salinger's complete demise. This was a lengthy and meticulous task, and preparations naturally had to be thorough. There was also a certain risk, as it involved relics left by the former death and related to source material and the underworld. Tang stood on the sea, gazing at this dark, violent, and chaotic sea. The turbulent waters around him all calmed down as they approached Tang. The power of miracle made the sea around him incredibly stable. In the dark world, Tang's dark eyes shimmered with subtle, crystal-like, brilliant light. Thus, in the observer's eyes, this sea was divided into 3 layers: upper, middle, and lower. The first layer is the violent sea of the real world. Due to the divine power fluctuations before death's demise, it became a forbidden land of death that no one dared to easily set foot in. This sea conceals the stillness caused by divine power and spirituality. Seawater should be the source of many lives. In waters yet to be explored and polluted by humans, biodiversity is a natural development. However, here, not only can humans not easily set foot, but even most of the fish, algae, and other life forms that originally lived in the deep sea quickly died, leaving only a small portion that underwent twisted and bizarre mutations, surviving in a way that ordinary people cannot comprehend. The second layer is the violent sea within the spirit world, which covers the violent sea. It is also chaotic and disorderly, with the aura of death polluting the entire spirit world area, making that spirit world area dangerous and impossible to teleport through. Even spirit world creatures continuously move away from that area. Divination and prophecy related to the violent sea information are all dead silent. Divination and prophecy performed in the spirit world area within the violent sea mostly end in failure. The third layer is a relatively special space, somewhat connected to the underworld, presenting a sealed state that cannot be opened without meeting certain conditions. This layer is the arrangement left by Salinger before his demise, a mausoleum left by a sequence 0, which is the treasure left by death. The location of the death pathway's uniqueness. If it were the normal way of opening, it should be the bloodline of death's direct descendants, plus death's leftover ring and dad's brass whistle. These 3 combined, led by a Beander who is at least at the angel level of the death pathway, would allow for a successful and relatively safe opening of the mausoleum left after death's demise. Owen emerged from the spirit world, wearing dark light armor, also looking at this space. "How do we get in?" he asked Tang. Under normal circumstances, our bloodline is relatively pure and meets the requirements of direct descendants. As long as we add the ring and the brass whistle, we can successfully take the normal path and relatively safely enter the mausoleum. However, this time, we are here to destroy the overall stability of the mausoleum and render all of death's remaining arrangements ineffective, so we won't take the normal path. We will force our way in. Tang's lips curved slightly. After all, Salinger's remaining arrangements include elements to revive him. What do you think would happen if a high-level Beander of the death pathway entered the former death's mausoleum through the normal path? Owen pondered for a moment and said cautiously, "Possession." This was a term that appeared in some of Rosalie the Great's novels, and colloquially, it means returning from the dead, similar to the spiritual remnants left in Beander characteristics. Something like that. Tang took out a lantern from the historical mist. I analyzed the arrangements here before. This is a very interesting ritual. What death passed down through bloodline was not just the death's bloodline, but also a very small portion of this deity's spiritual remnants. These spiritual remnants usually don't have much impact, but at specific moments, with special arrangements, unexpected consequences might be achieved. And a high-level Beander of the death pathway, after bringing offerings, entering death's mausoleum, wouldn't that be him sacrificing to the former death? Of course, this high-level Beander of the death pathway is not the sacrificer, he will also become the sacrifice. So, once a high-level Beander of the death pathway enters that mausoleum and sees that thing, he will become a vessel for death's revival. Owen was stunned. This is truly. For Beanders of the death pathway, a high-level Beander has absolute suppression over a lower-level Beander. Even the Pale Emperor would not fare well against the origin of death, the destination of souls, the eternal end, let alone a connection derived from bloodline. They were fine, at least they were a generation apart. Dad would have been affected if he came in his state. In the original work, the Black Knight goddess had already controlled the artificial death, which was the combination of the death pathway's uniqueness plus half of Azik Eggers' soul. This is what nullified Salinger's arrangements in the mausoleum. Otherwise, after Azik Eggers entered the mausoleum, Salinger's spiritual will would inevitably revive in him, thereby allowing death to complete the miracle of resurrection. Miracle workers have the authority to resurrect. How could a deity who controls death not have the ability to resurrect? So we can't let Dad come, and you need to be careful too. Tang shrugged, saying casually, for Beyonders of the death pathway, this is a very dangerous place, but for me, it's not a big problem. He was of the seer pathway. What did the suppression of the death pathway and the pollution of death's bloodline have to do with him? Could it be even harder to deal with than the revered one? After a brief rest, Tang held the lantern, letting its light illuminate the area around him, like a lighthouse in the dark, dispelling the surrounding darkness. Ready. Then let's go in. With that, Tang snapped his fingers with the hand not holding the lantern, as if making a wish to himself to fulfill his own desire. I wish for a small crack to appear in the seal of death's mausoleum. Under the lantern's glow, Tang, with an unperturbed expression, spoke his wish. The surrounding space began to twist and deform. Tiny, faint specks of light appeared around Tang and Owen. The entire world seemed to be shattered by something, and everything looked as if viewed through frosted glass, blurry and difficult to perceive normally. This wish was a miracle that a miracle worker could not fulfill. Even if it could be realized, it would certainly be in a distorted way. He was merely using the tone of a miracle worker, leveraging the strong observability and inclusiveness of Euclidean space, and the grafting ability of a cryptic servant, to forcibly connect the first and third layers. Euclidean space began to reduce its dimensions, attempting to accommodate and invade the mausoleum belonging to death, which could not be entered by ordinary means. Soon, the unclear, imperceptible state of viewing through frosted glass disappeared. The process of grafting two worlds from different spatiotemporal planes together through Euclidean space began quickly and ended quickly. Using the cryptic servant's grafting as a bridge, Tang and Owen easily passed through the seal outside the mausoleum, which prevented any Beyonders not of that pathway from entering or exiting. They successfully entered the lowest layer of the Violent Sea, which is the third layer, through unconventional means. The surroundings were still dark, looking no different from the usual state of the Violent Sea. However, essentially, there was still a difference. If we don't enter through normal means, let me think, what would we encounter? Before he could finish his sentence, something beneath the dark sea seemed to be rapidly approaching them. Tang lowered his gaze, and through the observer's authority, he ignored the fact that nothing could be seen on this deep, lightless ocean, looking at the continuous, vast, endless corpses beneath the sea. He let out an "ah." Right, these are the vengeful spirits and monsters formed from people who died believing in death during the Fourth Epoch, when death ruled the Baron Empire. Their numbers were vast, and due to death's demise, after the fall of the Phoenix ancestor Gregory and Salinger, the two masters of the underworld could no longer function normally. Until the South Continent rebuilt a new underworld with Owen becoming the Pale Emperor, those deceased souls, after death, either stagnated in place as vengeful spirits or dissipated. Most of those who had once believed in death, upon dying, would all be gathered here. This number was quite enormous. Suddenly, Tang's spiritual intuition stirred. He looked into the distance in the direction of his premonition. Hidden at the end of the darkness was a black mausoleum, its structure similar to a pyramid but inverted, embedded in the distant black sky, almost buried, surrounded by countless black mists and death. The target is there. Just as Tang was about to move, his gaze swept downwards, and some pale bones had, at some unknown point, passed through the sea surface and grabbed his feet. Tang looked down. The continuous corpses, which were not close to them just moments ago, were now like martyrs buried with an emperor, loyally guarding the mausoleum and expanding his territory even after his death. More and more corpses emerged from the seabed, dragging all intruders on the sea surface, intending to pull them all into the eternal darkness where no light could be seen. These were the Revenants loyal to Salinger. They were highly aggressive and not easily suppressed by other high-level Beyonders of the death pathway. Tang let out a tisk, and looked at Owen. Owen looked at the corpses beneath his feet, his light brown eyes gradually turning into a bottomless, void-like color with a quality of death. The bodies of the corpses, vengeful spirits, and monsters that were dragging him began to disintegrate, heading towards the end they were supposed to reach after death. Seeing that there was no problem there, Tang unhurriedly took out a 3-meter-long dark golden sun scepter from the historical void image. The surface of the sun scepter was engraved with countless symbols and patterns, each symbol and pattern constantly trembling and moving as it appeared in the real world, as if it could detach from the sun scepter's surface at any moment and dissipate madness in all directions. The sun scepter, mad knowledge. So, let us praise the sun. Chapter 318, 317 The Past. The tip of the sun scepter touched the sea surface, and symbols representing knowledge eroded downwards from the sea surface, one after another. Finally, the black sun exploded at the bottom of the sea. Praise the sun! Praise the sun! Praise the sun! The vengeful spirits and undead holding Tang's feet released him one after another. They all sang praises to the sun, becoming tainted by the black sun, and under its influence, swiftly became a part of the sun scepter that continuously praised the sun. Tang looked at the inverted black pyramid in the distance, which was their destination. Just as he was about to use the cryptic servant's authority to graft the space there to the space here, something else in the seabed seemed to be moving rapidly, charging towards Tang. A huge, downward collapsing area suddenly appeared on the dark sea surface. A strange fish-like creature, about 100 meters long, completely black, exuding death aura and a fishy smell, opened its mouth wide, intending to swallow Tang whole. But the next moment, the body of this giant fish-like creature was disintegrated. Spiritual body threads appeared on the giant fish-like creature, turning every piece of its flesh, every bone, organ, internal organ, and blood vessel into a marionette. Then, it was disassembled by an invisible force, fixed in place and unable to move. This was a transcendent creature, equivalent to the undying of the Death Pathways Sequence 4. However, it was now encountering a marionettist's rapid marionette transformation. For a cryptic servant, any creature that once possessed spiritual body threads would inherently possess them. However, if this is a setup left by death, it shouldn't be this simple. If it's all small fry, other Sequence 1 or Sequence 2 Beyonders could easily deal with them if they intruded. If they also brought a sealed artifact from the Sun Pathway, these small fry monsters would be meaningless except for wasting spirituality and time. While pondering this, Tang, following the same method, marionette transformed several demigod-level marionettes. After equipping them with bionic mimicry modules, he sent them to the inverted pyramid to check the situation. After doing all this, Tang finally looked at Owen. Need help. Owen's situation was more troublesome than his. The Death Consul of the Death Pathway at the angel level signifies that the consuls have absolute dominion over undead creatures, whether they are vengeful spirits, living corpses, or other things formed after death. Under normal circumstances, their mere existence can make undead creatures submit, without even needing to use extraordinary abilities to suppress and control them. However, there were also partial mental imprints of Salinger here, stronger than Owen, the Pale Emperor. These undead creatures were Death's subjects, things he ruled over. If Salinger's mental imprints weren't controlling these souls, which remained his subjects even after death, Owen's Death Consul ability combined with Salinger's bloodline would be enough to quickly clear the entire sea area, even if it were filled with undead creatures. However, for a Sequence 1, even without the Death Consul ability, the Pale Emperor's mastery over death was sufficient to clear away these souls, which were only somewhat special and lacked extraordinary characteristics to sustain them. The Pale Emperor, a Sequence 1 of the Death Pathway, is a high-level deepening of the concept of death. He himself is the source of death walking on the earth. The Pale Emperor can rapidly dissipate the life of living beings, causing the target's aura to decay little by little, as if rushing towards the endpoint of death. He can also cause the living characteristics of magical items to quickly scatter, as if they have reached the end of their life. And within the range of his influence, even the concept of death itself will wither and vanish. No need. Owen smashed the skull of a living corpse with a punch, then used the soul flame burning in its eye sockets as a core to issue a wide-ranging death command to the surroundings. A pale color covered the undead creatures crawling out of the sea and those at the bottom of the sea, causing all of them, along with their very concept, to rapidly vanish with the passage of time. Tang nodded, seeing that the situation there was also being handled quickly, and continued to gaze at the inverted mausoleum in the distance. Putting the sun scepter back into the historical mist, Tang carried the lantern and, with the prior help of the marionettes and the observer's ability, carefully examined the inverted pyramid mausoleum. "That's strange," Tang exclaimed, sighing with a hint of interest. The marionettes he sent out were clearly rushing towards the inverted mausoleum, but under the perception controlled by Tang's spiritual body threads, the marionettes were moving. Yet, under his observation, these marionettes had barely truly approached the mausoleum's location. They were indeed getting further away from Tang, but not closer to the mausoleum. It killed the concept of distance, keeping the mausoleum itself always in an unreachable otherworld. There's still a difference between forcing one's way in and entering through normal procedures. This should be another layer of protection mechanism. Conversely, Tang glanced at his feet, this deep, seemingly endless expanse of ocean. After being cleansed by the black sun, the things beneath this sea area should have become chanting praises to the sun scepter. But now, at the bottom of this sea area, vengeful spirits and undead continued to emerge. Not only that, Tang looked at Owen, and through the dark, lightless seawater, he also saw that beneath Owen, those souls that should have died with the Pale Emperor, with even death itself erased, were continuously reappearing. Wave after wave, endless. It's a death imprint. Owen, who was more familiar with the death pathway than Tang, quickly noticed something amiss. Something is hidden at the bottom of this sea area. It can use the death imprints generated after these undead creatures are eliminated to revive them once again in the form of vengeful spirits and undead. Whether swallowed by the sun scepter or dying with even death itself vanishing, they would revive. Only marionette transformation could kill them, because the vengeful spirits and undead after marionette transformation were still in a special, living state, preventing the death imprint from returning. A higher level replacement for the Pale Emperor. Tang clicked his tongue, the Eternal Darkness River, then. That's right, as a sequence 0 of the death pathway, Salinger unified all his death imprints and stored them in a tributary of the Eternal Darkness River. At the same time, he was also a sequence 0 of the Red Priest pathway. Under such a configuration, it's quite normal for him to have interacted with the Eternal Darkness River before the Pale Calamity and done something strange with it. Connecting this, Tang's gaze shifted slightly. That means, if we can't reach that mausoleum where distance has been killed, we'll have to face an endless army of undead that keeps reviving, with who knows how many revival chances. Unless he could marionette transform all the undead, directly breaking this cycle from its essence. Owen said seriously, yes, we. Doesn't that mean these things are continuous, never tiring, don't take up space, are full of horror effects, possess certain extraordinary abilities, are numerous, and can instantly revive even if they die, model workers? What a perfect, corpse, farming machine, a large resurrection point. Owen was about to say, let's go quickly, we can't clear these things out. He sent Tang a, are you alright? Questioning look, and Tang returned a, there's such a good thing. Smiling face. Oh, since I'm already here, Grandpa, how can I refuse such a welcoming gift? While he was busy dealing with these welcoming gifts, or rather, the vengeful spirits and evil spirits formed from death imprints, the Euclidean space, which Tang had begun to accommodate, merge, and replicate as a projection of this place, suddenly trembled violently. Tang, as the actual manipulator of the Euclidean space, paused. He looked up in the direction of the mausoleum. The reason Tang was so unconcerned and could leisurely clear the mobs here was that he didn't care at all about the mausoleum being unreachable. Such a thing couldn't stop him, who simultaneously possessed the observer authority. For a specially opened space, as long as the Euclidean space merged with this place and projected it into the Euclidean space, then for him, whether outside or inside the mausoleum, he could freely move through the Euclidean space and the cryptic servant's authority. Observe the eternal darkness. He slightly raised his head, and in his pitch-black eyes, which seemed to hide a deep ocean, he seemed to see something. What? Owen looked over at Tang, seeing Tang frozen in place, and took a few steps towards him. Then, Owen saw Tang's body gradually turning pale, becoming ethereal and illusory. He was being assimilated by the origin of death. Tang. Owen immediately grabbed Tang's shoulder. Tang's neck made a crisp sound, as if it had bent due to the erosion of time and the arrival of death. Tang's head snapped off and fell onto the sea surface. His body, too, had been corroded by the paleness, becoming illusory and transparent, and rapidly vanished. The lantern, which had come from the historical mist to illuminate the surroundings, returned to the historical mist with him. The only light on the sea surface extinguished, and only the marionettes that had just been equipped with bionic mimicry modules were spared. The remaining marionettes, which had not yet been fully processed and were only simply marionette transformed, also rapidly dissipated after losing the marionettist's control, returning to the origin of death. Owen's pupils constricted. He looked around, but did not see the miracle workers, resurrection from the dead, miracle occur. How could this be? At the same time, something seemed to be trembling in this dark, lightless seabed. The already turbulent sea surface was hit by strong winds, and a cold, sticky rain suddenly fell. At the bottom of the sea, something was disturbed. The constantly appearing vengeful spirits and evil spirits swarmed out from the seabed in clumps, like a disturbed hornet's nest. When Tang opened his eyes again, the first thing he saw was a familiar person in front of him, wearing a deep black robe with gold embroidery, a golden bird-shaped crown, with indifferent eyes and bronze skin, looking at him. Azik Eggers. No, he was, and he wasn't. Tang's gaze shifted slightly, but the Azik Eggers in front of him suddenly extended a hand. The corners of this seemingly indifferent death consul's mouth moved slightly, as if he wanted to say something to Tang. However, before the death consul could say anything, Tang had already transformed himself into an unobservable state. Azik Eggers's gaze shifted. Tang, with practiced ease, swiftly manipulated the spiritual body threads of the death consul in front of him. Before the death consul could make any further moves, Tang quickly pulled out a black silk top hat from the historical mist. Taking advantage of the stiffness caused by the spiritual body threads, he directly placed it on Azik Eggers's head. The large-scale theft belonging to the Thief Angel King successfully took effect. Azik Eggers's movements stopped. Tang also quickly completed his rapid marionette transformation, fixing Azik Eggers's state at the extreme limit approaching marionette transformation. A Sequence 1 fighting a Sequence 2, under the combined effect of multiple authorities, Tang completed it quite quickly, soon gaining control over Azik Eggers. If he moved again, he could gain a death consul marionette, but he ultimately didn't continue. It felt a bit like filial piety. After confirming that Azik Eggers could no longer make any more effective moves, Tang then transformed from the unobservable state back to a normal state. He quickly scanned the surroundings. With just one glance, he confirmed where he was. This was deep within the underworld, a palace originally used by Death's descendant and Death's favored ones. Compared to the current dilapidated Death Palace complex, which was in disrepair due to lack of maintenance and other issues, the decorations and furnishings around this palace now proved that the Death Palace before him was not yet damaged and was in use. This meant it was a building from at least 1,000 years ago. Tisk. Just now, the Euclidean space and a tributary of the Eternal Darkness River, which Salinger had somehow drawn over from beneath the Death Mausoleum, converged. Past, present, and future can be unified here, forming a closed loop. The past can influence the future, and similarly, the future can influence the past. So, when the Eternal Darkness River and Salinger's arrangements intersected with the Euclidean space and showed signs of merging, it pulled him into this big mess. Tang tried to sense, no problem. That section of the Eternal Darkness River's tributary was projecting into the Euclidean space. Once this projection was complete, he should be able to return to his original spacetime. He was currently at a spacetime node from 1,000 years ago. But, what time is it now? Before the Four Emperors' War, or after the Four Emperors' War, before the Pale Calamity? Should he divine it? Tang thought of something and looked at the marionette-transformed Azik Eggers. He let out an "ah," walked up to his father, who didn't yet recognize him, and asked with a smile, "Dear Death Consul, do you know what time it is now?" Chapter 319, 318 Dual Pathway True God. I haven't seen you here before. Who are you? Azik Eggers lifted his eyelids, looking at Tang, who was smiling at him, and said emotionlessly, "You and I have a bloodline connection, but you are not His Majesty's other children, my brother, or my brother's descendant." For angels, such bloodline connections can be detected through mysticism, let alone the descendants of the death pathway, which has bloodline suppression. However, Tang was not of the death pathway. Even Nether Emperor Salinger had no pathway suppression over Tang. Azik Eggers could only sense the bloodline connection but could not do anything with it. How should I put it? I'm your dear son, surprised. Unexpected. Ask Eggers. What nonsense is this person saying? System. Host, how old are you? Why are you so mischievous? Tang adjusted the part of Ask Eggers that he had marionettist ed, releasing some of the spirit body threads control over Ask Eggers, allowing him to move but preventing most self-harming actions. This was an ability created by combining the cryptic servant level with the power of the Supreme One. Tang called it partial marionettist ing. Unlike a typical marionettist, a marionettist's marionettist ing targets the entire object. This whole only exists in two states, marionettist ed and non-marionettist ed. There is no situation where only a partial body or partial spirit body is marionettist ed. If it's a marionette, it's a marionette, if it's not, it's not. It's impossible for the lungs to be marionettist ed while the whole is not. But for Beyonders of the Supreme One pathway, there are still parts that can be disassembled between the spirit and flesh, which exist as a whole. The Beyonder ability created by combining Observer and Cryptic Servant can support the Cryptic Servant in partially marionettist-ing the target's spirit and flesh, without fully marionettist-ing them, thereby achieving control. After partially marionettist-ing Ask Eggers' spirit body and ensuring basic control over him, Tang stopped his marionettist-ing process on Ask Eggers. This way, even if he released this partial marionettist-ing, as long as Ask Eggers did not truly die, the organs and spirit body that died due to the release of marionettist-ing could still be repaired by an angel. Ask Eggers felt his pulled, dry brain, like a rusty machine, gradually return to normal. He glanced at Tang, who seemed harmless, and his gaze shifted slightly towards the door. A young man wearing a black silk top hat and a matching tailcoat formal suit had appeared there at some unknown point. Mr. Error Nicholas Flamel, with great gentlemanliness, doffed his hat to Ask Eggers, then turned his head, smiling, seemingly looking through the closed door at the scene outside. Even if this person was just an image from the historical void, he could not easily deal with him. He couldn't defeat him, and it was even highly likely that any action he took would result in him being completely marionettist-ed or parasitized. Ask Eggers quickly made a judgment and did not act rashly after his spirit body threads were released. What arrived was a cryptic servant of the diviner pathway and a historical void image of a time worm from an adjacent pathway, both sequence peak existences. Ask Eggers glanced at Tang, who was looking at him, claiming to be his child in a friendly manner, yet had directly tried to kill him upon their first meeting, and lowered his eyelids slightly. I have no children. That doesn't prevent what is bound to happen in the future, but Your Excellency Consul, just as you don't recognize me now and want to kill me, I don't fully trust you either. After all, Tang was not entirely at ease doing nothing to Ask Eggers, who was in the Death Consul state, influenced by a higher-ranking being, the source of his direct bloodline, Nether Emperor Salinger, and the ruler of the Byron Empire. Otherwise, he might have to experience a resurrection from the dead, being backstabbed or something. No thanks. Tang's gaze swept over Ask Eggers in front of him, then looked at the surrounding environment. This time, he wasn't looking at the indoor decor and architectural features but observing the outside situation through the walls. The void sky, the inverted river of eternal darkness, and the dense aura of death, this place was truly unsuitable for survival for anyone not of the death pathway or an undead creature. As for here, this should be the palace area where the death god's favored and descendants resided, not far from the death god, the very bottom, Nether Emperor Salinger's palace. Since he is the death consul of the Byron Empire, Salinger will conduct certain monitoring, and it's normal for him to be watching this side. By using error and deception to simultaneously trick the rules here and fool any gaze that might be cast this way at an unknown time, Tang temporarily did not intend to let Salinger discover that Ask Eggers had a problem or that an outsider had entered. However, this was not a long-term solution. The synchronization time of the Euclidean space with that branch of the Eternal Darkness River is limited. After the synchronization is complete, the special spatiotemporal node opened by the Eternal Darkness River, a source material, will also disappear. The next time I come, it's unknown when that will be. After all, this was an unexpected change brought by the source material, but he could try to replicate it later, though he couldn't guarantee success. After all, it involved source material, and such things were not like the marionettes under his command, which he could mold as he pleased. Therefore, Tang planned to take this opportunity to test Nether Emperor Salinger. He wanted to see what other major hidden dangers his nominal grandfather had, which would also help him further assist the Black Knight Goddess in suppressing Salinger and safely recovering the Death Pathway's uniqueness. Ah, right, my question just now. Tang reached a hand into the historical mist, chatting casually with his biological father, whom he still didn't know. Salinger is already a Red Priest, right? Azik Eggers remained expressionless, merely nodding coldly and calmly, showing great composure and understanding. Yes, His Majesty is already a Red Priest. At this point, Azik Eggers suddenly paused. He softly said to Tang, who claimed to be his child, "Today is the day the original witch comes to see His Majesty." Original witch. Original witch. Tang's movement of pulling the historical void image paused slightly, then, under Azik Eggers' gaze, he pulled something from the historical mist directly into the real world with a strong pull. It was a mass of light whose face could not be seen clearly, whose countenance could not be directly looked at, hazy, illusory, as if it did not exist in this world. At the same time, Nicholas, standing at the door, narrowed his eyes. He pressed down on his black silk top hat, turned his head to Tang. Salinger is looking this way. He must have discovered something is wrong here. So fast. Indeed, against a dual pathway true god, the error created by Nicholas, who was only sequence 1 and merely a historical void image, could not completely deceive Nether Emperor Salinger. Tang wasn't ready for his first meeting with his grandfather yet. Oh, he was still too rude. What emerged from the historical mist was mass after mass of vitalized knowledge. This knowledge was distorted, bearing the most insane colors in this world. As Nicholas's figure dissipated by the door, a massive, insane surge of knowledge, accompanied by countless pieces of information that could directly shut down one's brain, rushed out of the large door, which had opened at some unknown point and was engraved with feathered serpent symbols. Outside the door, a middle-aged man, who had also appeared at some unknown time, dressed in a deep black robe, with a stern, ungentle, expressionless face and iron-gray eyes, looked at the illusory, transparent, hazy, insane tide composed of countless pieces of knowledge. He directly faced the knowledge seeks person, created by Tang. Nether Emperor, Salinger. Dual Pathway Sequence 0, the half-mad death god of the Baron Empire. So, this is the period after the Four Emperors' War and before the Pale Disaster, when Salinger was still negotiating with Creek. Tang, who had transformed himself into an unobservable state, pulled the unresponsive Azik Eggers into the Euclidean space, leaving the hermit's historical void image to use insane knowledge to buy him observation time and create conditions for Nicholas. Nicholas reappeared in the corner of the room after leaving the doorway. Mr. Error twirled his black silk top hat, and during the brief moment of stiffness in Salinger's brain caused by the influx of insane knowledge, he reached out and grabbed forward. This top-tier thief snatched a dark, ethereal something from Salinger. Ah, damn. Nicholas regretfully watched as his arm, along with his entire historical void image, became ethereal. He had stolen death from this deity, and then he was assimilated by death. Nicholas's figure once again vanished from its original spot. A transparent insect with 12 segments replaced his fate of being assimilated by death and returned to the historical mist. After all, a dual pathway true god of the death pathway and red priest pathway was not so easy to deal with. The Nether Emperor, who had quickly shaken off the influence of the insane knowledge in a short time by using the characteristics of death and the power of conquest, narrowed his eyes, looking at the strange mass that had also hidden itself at some unknown point. Hermit. He tilted his head slightly, looking at Nicholas, who had once again appeared in the corner. Time worm. He smiled, his voice seemingly filled with infinite malice and insane desire. What an interesting combination. This deity, who had ruled the Baron Empire during the Fourth Epoch, slightly twisted his neck. Then, he extended a not-so-robust, bronze-skinned arm from beneath his deep black robe. In this deity's hand, a mass of illusory, waveless flame, revealing distortion, destruction, and an aura of the end of all things, suddenly rose. The fourth pillar requires one sequence 1 Beander characteristic and uniqueness from each of the 3 eternal pathways and 2 war pathways. While these 5 pathways can transition between each other, they also contain some special conditions. For situations where one forcibly transitions without satisfying the pathway transition rules, the combined abilities are equally bizarre and terrifying. And besides Alistar Tudor being a true madman, who forcibly transitioned from the Black Emperor pathway to the Red Priest pathway true god despite the risk of madness and loss of control, Nether Emperor Salinger's attempt to forcibly accommodate Sequence 0 Red Priest while only being a Sequence 0 Death god, thereby gaining some control over the Eternal Darkness River. Now that I think about it, it is indeed very strange. After all, he was already Sequence 0, there was no need to take such a huge risk to do such a thing, right? Tang continued to observe Nether Emperor Salinger from within the Euclidean space. In the real world, at the moment the illusory flame appeared, the hidden hermit's historical void image reappeared in its original spot. The hermit looked at the flame in Salinger's hand. Tang narrowed his eyes, also looking at the flame from within the Euclidean space. As a qualified marionettist, he would not easily step into a trap. With another surge of insane knowledge, the hermit had already analyzed the characteristics of the flame in Salinger's hand through his unique authority. His twisted body, composed of insane knowledge, gradually became humanoid, constructing a human form. System, I'll graft you over later. You directly contact your main system and get power from it. Tang quickly communicated with his system. Then, he directly grafted the system to the hermit in the real world. Without Beander characteristics or uniqueness support, the hermit, being merely a historical void image, would likely not be able to suppress Salinger. So, he directly used the system as a bridge, using the Euclidean space to cross time and space, obtaining some power, symbols, and authority from the knowledge wilderness to supplement himself and maintain the Sequence 0 rank and authority. After making the necessary arrangements, Tang quickly borrowed the authority of the Euclidean space again to borrow power from the future. This time, it was no longer borrowing the ability of his cryptic servant self but directly borrowing from a higher level entity. He wanted to borrow the gift power of the Sequence 0 Inches Supreme One. A magician does not perform without preparation. In a situation where he might face a combination of a Sequence 0 and a semi-old one, including the original witch, Tang would not relax his vigilance. Of course, he could also just leave, staying in the Euclidean space until that branch of the Eternal Darkness River finished merging with the Euclidean space. He could then directly return to the current spatiotemporal node, but this was a good opportunity, wasn't it? There are also some Fourth Epoch questions I really want answers to, especially those involving Creek. That somewhat strange, deep mirror world that the Euclidean space couldn't project into. Moreover, Tang always felt there was an inexplicable relationship between Alistar Tudor, Salinger, and Creek. What kind of bizarre relationship was it between these three men? No, two men and one woman. Chapter 320, 319 Knowledge Demon. The flames symbolizing death and destruction in Nether Emperor Salinger's hand instantly ignited everything around him. Whether it was Nicola's figure, the surrounding buildings, or the mad knowledge directly facing him, all spontaneously combusted as the illusory, formless flames burned in Salinger's hand. The hermit was bathed in the illusory, formless flames, gradually taking on a humanoid form, and rapidly collapsing and shriveling as the flames continuously burned the knowledge. Most of the knowledge was ignited, rendered null, and dissipated. The remaining, unignited parts, however, passed through the illusory, formless flames and recombined into a new torrent of information, but instead of attacking Salinger, they concealed their forms, dissipated into the material world, and evaded the burning of the illusory flames in Salinger's hand. The hermit hid in a world where the illusory flames could not reach. Nether Emperor Salinger narrowed his eyes slightly. This deity looked at the remaining, mad knowledge, that had been ignited and seemed unable to resist, then rotated his wrist, and the illusory, formless flames directly exploded outwards with the ignited, mad knowledge, as the center, and the scattered, ignited knowledge simultaneously ignited all surrounding things once more. Everything that came into contact with these things, whether walls, ground, or exquisite decorations, turned into dust invisible to the naked eye, completely disappearing from the material world. With this burning, the surrounding buildings also suffered. The Death's descendants and Death's dependents who were unaware of the situation here, those of low and middle sequence were fleeing outwards, Sequence 4 and Sequence 3 saints were observing from their positions, and Sequence 2 and Sequence 1 angels had already sensed the abnormality. Divine battle. This was a divine battle that had erupted prematurely. Another Sequence 0 had appeared in the depths of the underworld. This realization made them consider whether they needed to support His Majesty, but this level of battle was beyond their participation. Furthermore, His Majesty was already a dual pathway true god of the Death pathway and Red Priest pathway. If His Majesty could not defeat them, it would be even more impossible for them to win. It doesn't resemble any of the 7 gods of the North Continent. Let's wait and see, His Majesty hasn't ordered us to go. The Death's dependents and descendants settled down, awaiting further developments. Things ignited by the destructive flames would not easily vanish, but after burning to a certain extent, they would extinguish themselves and be withdrawn by Nether Emperor Salinger. Otherwise, the entire underworld would be completely engulfed in flames symbolizing death and destruction, ceasing to exist. The dual pathway combination of Red Priest and Death, while bringing madness, also opened a new path for this former god of the undead. Equivalent to a weakened version of the calamity of destruction and eternal darkness. As a tool pulled from the historical mist to buy time, Nicola had to stop his attempt to steal the opponent's authorities of conquest, war, and death. Before the illusory flames reached him, this error's figure quickly concealed itself, and at the same time, he dispatched a large number of time worms, beginning to search for parasitic targets in the surroundings. Among other things, the underworld was certainly not lacking in corpses and souls. Nicola discovered that many things that had not been there before had now appeared beneath their feet. Needless to say, one Nicola after another appeared before Nether Emperor Salinger, who was now standing at the entrance of the collapsed palace. The time worms successively parasitized the undead army that had revived and surged forth due to Salinger's arrival, emerging from the ground in advance and transforming into figures wearing black silk top hats and black tailcoats. Mad knowledge surged forth once more, and when the hermit, returning from his concealed state, reappeared before Nether Emperor Salinger, he already had a human-like appearance, though still quite blurry, presenting an unnatural texture composed of countless spliced things. He looked at the Nether Emperor before him and extended his hand. The torrent of information reappeared. This time, it was more complex and terrifying than the knowledge that had been enveloped when facing Salinger for the first time. This torrent of information simultaneously carried countless contaminations symbolizing fate, rushing towards Nether Emperor Salinger without hesitation. Tang was going to attempt to use this opportunity to inject the contamination of fate into Nether Emperor Salinger. To fix the fate of inevitable death, to fix the fate of inevitably dissipating in the empty, dim, soundless, textureless, where even time and death themselves would dissipate, drowning in the waters of the eternal darkness river, due to the Black Night Goddess and his arrangements. Nether Emperor Salinger smiled slightly, his calm yet mad eyes sweeping over the various Nicolas around him, finally settling on the hermit who had reappeared. The same trick, why would you think I'd fall for it a second time? With that, the illusory, formless flames burned once more, the earth trembled slightly, and the hermit's eyelids twitched. He saw before Nether Emperor Salinger, and all around his feet, rotten skeleton soldiers, feathered serpents burning with pale flames, and vengeful spirits emerging from the ground. Nicola's parasitism could not replace such a massive undead army, so, one undead creature after another, summoned by Nether Emperor Salinger, crawled out from the ground, layer upon layer, endlessly. And these undead armies were both Salinger's most loyal servants and this Red Priest soldier puppets, sharing Nether Emperor Salinger's abilities and spirituality within a certain range. The Death pathway is good at summoning monsters, and the Red Priest can directly turn monsters into soldier puppets. Tisk tisk, truly a disgusting combination. Tang in Euclidean space couldn't help but sigh softly. The undead army that emerged from the ground quickly and unhesitatingly blocked in front of their loyal emperor. The tide of mad knowledge, carrying fate, fiercely crashed onto these beings. They absorbed the mad knowledge, and then were ignited by the illusory, formless flames that suddenly expanded within their bodies. Knowledge was being ignited, knowledge was disappearing. Facing a sequence peak of the knowledge 2 pathways, among all methods, the best was to completely destroy the mad knowledge they relied upon, to prevent them from doing anything with that part of the knowledge. Unfortunately, I'm very good at this. Nicola also had nearly 2/3 of his avatars ignited. The remaining 1/3 of his avatars, while dodging the roaring undead soldier puppets, pressed down their black silk top hats and aimed at Nether Emperor Salinger's position, making the gesture of stealing. A touch of crimson appeared in Nether Emperor Salinger's black eyes, then quickly transformed into an indifferent, mad iron black. Nicola stole nothing this time. Salinger dominated his spirit, dominated everything around him, including his own authority. The degree of control he exhibited over his authority was greater than the effect of Nicola's stealing. Nicola's second blasphemous attempt to steal a true god's authority ended in failure. Tisk. Indeed, compared to the Lord of Storms and the others, this one's authority was not so easy to steal. This was not only because of the Red Priest pathway's peculiarity, but also because the opponent was a dual pathway true god, a higher level than ordinary true gods. Half of Nicola's remaining one-third of avatars were covered and swallowed by the surging undead creatures, then completely dissipated in the burning of the illusory, formless flames. He had to conceal himself and disappear once more, waiting for an opportunity to find loopholes and actively create new errors. In this battle involving a true god's level of power, as a Nicola who was merely a historical void image without the support of extraordinary characteristics and uniqueness, he was well aware that he only played an auxiliary role. The one truly responsible for delaying time and providing Tang with observation intervals was the Hermit, who had received power support from the knowledge wilderness. After the mad knowledge was intercepted, the Hermit, ignited once more, had his figure dissipate again. However, this time he did not abandon a large amount of knowledge to serve as fuel, transforming himself into a small cluster of information to escape the fate of being burned, but rather underwent a certain transformation himself. Layers of mad knowledge superimposed, and the new knowledge that emerged instantly transformed into an outer robe, draped over the Hermit, who was only in human form. On that outer robe, string after string of information torrents solidified like rain, moist, silent, and unexpressed ineffable things. The outer robe enveloped the Hermit's body, causing the violent, illusory flames to dissipate instantly. The Hermit then recombined once more, transforming into clusters of dreamlike, morning mountain mist-like substances. The dense mist suddenly spread out in an instant before the undead soldier puppet army reached him, and in an instant, it swallowed them all, including Nether Emperor Salinger. The Hermit was a sage of hidden knowledge, an expert in concealment with the authority of hiding. These transformed mad knowledge became dense mist, obstructing the vision of all things, and upon contact with the illusory flames ignited by Nether Emperor Salinger, they instantly enveloped them, forming an amber-like substance. Then the illusory flames, along with the amber shell, slowly vanished into the dense mist. After an initial analysis of the flames in Nether Emperor Salinger's hand, the Hermit utilized the uniqueness of his own authority, using some useless mad knowledge to encase these burning flames of knowledge, and as a whole, concealed them, disappearing from the material world, hiding the symbols of destruction and death. In the dense mist, the Hermit's figure condensed once more, and the burned, hidden knowledge reappeared on the Hermit's body. Mystical resurgence, arcane behemoth. Knowledge demon, mad arcane. Behind the Hermit, in the dense mist, a gigantic monster comparable to a castle appeared, with massive limbs and a buzzing, semicircular head, its entire body exuding various bizarre and distorted halos, constructed with knowledge as its core. That massive monster opened its mouth, which could be called a bloody maw, and raised its fist, half the size of a house, towards Nether Emperor Salinger, smashing it down fiercely. Nether Emperor Salinger's gaze seemed unaffected by the dense mist. He looked at this monster, and the invisible flames once again burned this castle-sized monster. The mad knowledge forming the arcane behemoth's body rapidly died under the burning of the illusory flames, being destroyed and damaged, but more mad knowledge surged out from within the arcane behemoth's body. For the Hermit, information could be copied, and could be recalculated. In the state of mastering core mad knowledge, high-ranking individuals of the Knowledge 2 pathways can re-evolve knowledge through knowledge. Even profound knowledge, its derivation relies on basic theoretical foundations. As long as the theoretical foundations exist, for the Hermit, knowledge can be continuously calculated and re-derived. The Hermit, who controlled the core of knowledge, could freely and continuously generate more and crazier knowledge. He was the embodiment of the concept of knowledge. The Hermit, standing beneath the arcane behemoth, looked at Nether Emperor Salinger, who was also looking at him with eyes radiating brilliant halos. The earth trembled slightly, and the flames created by Salinger were continuously hidden by the enveloping dense mist. The soldier puppets of the Red Priest's undead legion, however, were continuously stuffed with mad knowledge under the arcane behemoth's hammering. This attack, having part of its body damaged by the burning knowledge, failed to hit Salinger, only affecting the undead army crawling out from the ground. They either directly exploded, or twisted and writhed into monsters, or became information replication points, assimilated into a part of the Hermit. The Hermit and Nether Emperor Salinger gazed at each other from a distance. The Hermit extended his hand, aiming at Salinger, who was still looking at him indifferently. He attempted to directly conceal all of Nether Emperor Salinger's authorities related to death, war, and conquest. From a Sequence 9 Corpse Collector to a Sequence 0 Death, from a Sequence 9 Hunter to a Sequence 0 Red Priest, from low to high, from simple to difficult, step by step, hiding the abilities brought by extraordinary characteristics, the divinity, and the parts of him that connected with the source material. However, concealing a half-old one was extremely difficult. He extended his hand, and mad knowledge surged, but before the Hermit could act, Salinger was blocked by another god standing in front of him. "Looks like it's lively here." A lazy, slightly hoarse female voice echoed in the dense mist. The Hermit looked up, and a figure in a white bone dress, having appeared in the dense mist at some unknown time, her eyes shimmering, stood between Nether Emperor Salinger and the Hermit, blocking their converging gazes. In Euclidean space, Tang narrowed his eyes. This witch had thick, black, waterfall-like long hair, and a pair of sapphire-like blue eyes. Her gaze towards the Hermit contained scrutiny and assessment, eventually transforming into a strong smile. Original Witch Creek, attacking. Chapter 321, 320 Original Witch. In Euclidean space, he narrowed his eyes, watching Kike, who was smiling cheerfully, then looked suspiciously at Nether Emperor Salinger not far away. Why did these two, one after another, reek so strongly of Alistair Tudor? These three men, no, these two men and one woman are in a love triangle. He loves her, she loves him, he loves him. What kind of strange relationship is this? System, host, it seems something strange has slipped in. Alistair Tudor must be hungry, what a little glutton. System, the system silently spat out some cybergastric acid. It always felt that its host's mental state was becoming increasingly abnormal, and sometimes the things he said were disgustingly systemic. No. Tang quickly reflected on his own issues. He was focusing on the wrong thing. Now was not the time for gossip. Such matters could wait until he was huddled in some corner later. The current priority was, he began rapidly pulling out and then stuffing back historical void images. No, this isn't right either, this isn't right either. One after another, historical void images of Hunter sequence Beyonders Tang had seen before, or were simply his marionettes, continuously appeared and disappeared. Among them, Tang even pulled out Medici's historical void image and compared it with Salinger and the original witch, but the result still left him disappointed. Inferring some of the arrangements the original god made, based on the fact that the witch pathway's ritual for becoming a god involves the Chaos Sea, and combining this with the fact that both the god of the First Epoch and the Celestial Worthy accommodated multiple source materials, leading to their demise, it's pretty much set in stone that the god inserted things that shouldn't have been there into the two calamity pathways. Especially since Tang himself had a conqueror, and he had also seen the Red Angel evil spirit, Tang had also seen some residual influence of the original god, that bad seed, on Soren Einhorn Medici. He therefore concluded that the second pitfall of the witch and hunter pathways was the original god's means of resurrection. As for the first pitfall, that would naturally be the witch's sequence 7 and the hunter's sequence 4, but that had little to do with him. Therefore, it was normal for Medici, the original witch, Alistair Tudor, and Salinger, all true gods or angel kings of the two calamity pathways, to possess a certain mysticism similarity in the aspect of the original god's partial will reviving. But the problem Tang was looking for was not this. After searching through the historical void images of the hunter pathway Beyonders around him, even Medici, who followed the ancient sun god and could be considered the most ancient angel king, the closest to the Red Priest, did not have that strange thing. It seemed the problem indeed did not lie in the Beyonder characteristics or the Red Priest, but in Blood Emperor Alistair Tudor. This was something that wasn't present when Medici was in control but only appeared after Alistair Tudor became the Red Priest. Finishing the act of pulling historical projections, Tang continuously expanded his observation angles and deepened his observation levels using the observer and Euclidean spaces authority, while also retrieving the sun scepter from the historical mist. A hermit, a sequence 0, cannot handle it alone. Salinger and Kike together can evoke the symbol of the catastrophe of destruction, especially given whatever Kike and Alistair Tudor did in the Fourth Epoch. The first question now was, what did Alistair Tudor do to the Red Priest? The second was, Alistair Tudor's mental imprint remained in the Red Priest's uniqueness and Beander characteristics, so a semi-mad Salinger exhibited some of Alistair Tudor's traits. Tang could understand this. But why did the original witch have the imprint of Alistair Tudor, the Blood Emperor of the Tudor Empire during the Fourth Epoch? It was a very close connection, not like the relationship of having a few children. This level of mysticism correlation was not as simple as adjacent pathways or having a few children. The special mirror world they created, was it caused by that big pitfall? More potent mysticism symbols, the two calamity pathways, symbolizing the creator's feminine and masculine aspects. Alistair Tudor and the original witch almost dragged the gods to their graves with them in the Fourth Epoch. Trier sank underground, a special mirror world different from ordinary mirror worlds was born. Mirror people appeared, active among the nations of the North Continent, special mirrors. As Tang pondered this, his spirituality warned him, and he suddenly paused. The original witch, standing leisurely in the white mist created by the hermit, had subtly tilted her head at some point. She did not look at the hermit or Salinger, but rather at an empty space. This deity's hair, like a waterfall, floated up strand by strand, and at the ends of her hair, eyes opened one after another. Tang's observing movements paused. He looked at the original witch. The original witch seemed to be looking his way. She saw me. No, she probably only sensed him. If she had truly seen him, capable of penetrating space and dimensions, he would have been attacked immediately. But why could the original witch sense his presence? Tang, as the strongest diviner, narrowed his eyes. He held the sun scepter and calmly gave orders to the hermit and Nicola. Severely injure the original witch. If possible, turn her directly into a marionette of fate. The future influences the past, and the past influences the future. Past, present, and future are inherently a trinity. No matter what the original witch intended to do, influenced by fate, she would inevitably become a marionette of the future, walking a predetermined destiny. At that time, no matter what she and Alistair Tudor did, they would all be hung up as marionettes. In the real world, the hermit looked at the original witch Kike, who stood between him and Salinger. He was not affected by the charm of this highest-ranking witch. For the hermit, all desires and emotions, all memories and experiences, were segments of mad knowledge that could be edited, tampered with, deleted, and added. Even if a portion of the mad knowledge rebelled against the hermit due to the original witch's almost conceptual charm ability, the hermit could re-add the corresponding knowledge as long as the core knowledge was not tampered with, thereby achieving his own stable state. Why all this fighting and killing? The original witch Kike smiled. She was speaking to the hermit, to Salinger behind her, and to Nicholas Flamel, who was observing from the side. The natural charm effect caused both sides to pause, but the hermit's speed in breaking free from this state was clearly faster. We could clearly all three of us together. The original witch giggled, and with that, she once again displayed a smile towards the hermit. The hermit, crazy. A string of symbols appeared in the hermit's eyes. The arcane behemoth behind him roared, and once again, it slammed a monstrously huge fist, composed of countless mad knowledge, towards the original witch Kike and Salinger. Mad knowledge diffused, and sharp shrieks, one after another, and mad words, one after another, surged from the hermit's center towards his enemies. When Salinger saw Kike's smile, his figure wavered slightly. The illusory colors in this deity's eyes gradually turned iron black again. He was like the Blood Emperor, coldly summoning countless undead puppets from the ground, bone dragons, soldiers, burning with soul flames in the white mist, then devoured by illusory, formless flames. The flames compressed the range of the white mist, which had evolved from mad knowledge. Perhaps because the original witch, a symbol of disaster and chaos, was also present, the flames that would have originally been concealed by the hermit now burned more rapidly and fiercely. The arcane behemoth created by the hermit burned fiercely with these flames. At the same time, the undead puppets sacrificed themselves, charging for their emperor, crashing against the arcane behemoth's feet. A pale color also began to contaminate and climb onto the arcane behemoth's body. The hermit ignored the arcane behemoth. He had mystical resurgence, and instead aimed at the original witch Khoi. Under her somewhat curious gaze, he quickly concealed her authority over manipulating mirrors. This rapid concealment could only target authorities that were not core symbols for Sequence 0 true gods, and some might only last for a few breaths, not very stable, and she could easily regain ownership of the authority. But sometimes, just those few breaths of time could accomplish many things. Nicola's main body, further away, swiftly pulled a mirror with an ancient, rustic decoration, appearing to be made of tree bark in an oval frame, from the historical mist. His other avatars, upon seeing the original witch Khoi's smile, had already shown signs of infatuation. The time worms that had parasitized them had already returned to the historical mist as Nicola released them from parasitism. These avatars were all charmed. If the time worms returned to his main body, the corresponding influence would also return to him. Nicola, who wielded the authority of error, could of course create an error to reflect his main body's uncharmed state onto all avatars, but there was no need now. Because he was not targeting Salinger, who needed to win by numbers, accumulating possibilities through probability and trial and error to achieve his goal, but the original witch. To deal with the original witch, Nicola and Tang had already made corresponding arrangements. Nicola calmly manipulated the mirror he had pulled from the historical mist. He swiftly caressed the mirror's surface and quickly asked in Hermes language, "Mirror, mirror, who is the most beautiful woman in this world?" After saying this, Nicola quickly inverted the mirror, aiming its surface at Khoi, who suddenly looked at him from not far away. Khoi's figure was reflected on the surface of the magic mirror in Nicola's hand. The mirror's surface rippled, as if something had awakened. The originally hazy mirror surface was like a tranquil lake into which a stone had been thrown. The reflected Khoi in the mirror smiled alluringly. She seemed to be the most perfect woman, with a charm that could even enthrall rules, her eyes filled with laughter, gazing at Nicola, who was holding the mirror at this moment. But soon, this seemingly flawless face was gradually replaced by another. Long black hair turned into slightly curly chestnut hair, and a pair of azure eyes held a hint of tenderness. Her face became gentle rather than alluring. It was a female Rosal the Great, wearing maternity clothes, with a bulging belly, full of maternal radiance. That was the Mother card's face. Sequence 0, Mother. Completely transformed in appearance, the female Rosal the Great, who had gradually changed from reflecting the original witch's figure, now gently touched her abdomen, gazing at the original witch Khoi outside the mirror, her expression soft and loving, as if looking at her most mischievous child. "Of course it's you, Mama." The magic mirror let out a cracking sound, seemingly on the verge of shattering. That sharp voice, filled with deep affection for a mother, accompanied the complete shattering of the magic mirror, returning to the historical mist. The authority concealed by the hermit returned to the original witch's body, but at this moment, the original witch suddenly erupted with clusters of crimson light. This could no longer be transferred using mirror substitutes. The curse, already hit under the authority of error, would indiscriminately attack all mirror substitutes and mirror people representing the original witch. And these lights drilled into the original witch Khoi's flesh, bringing her new life. The next moment, behind the hermit, a deep, dark, mad beam of light praising the sun suddenly appeared. In Euclidean space, Tang picked up the sun scepter. Black, mad sunlight emanated from the twisted sun symbol on the scepter. He aimed the twisted sun symbol at the top of the scepter at the original witch, whose body was constantly cracking, petrifying, and then regenerating, and at Salinger behind the original witch. Madly praising the sun, the black tide of defiled and corrupted sunlight materialized, plummeting rapidly from higher dimensions into lower dimensions, engulfing the bodies of the original witch and Nether Emperor Salinger. The hermit struck again, utilizing the connection established with the system and knowledge wilderness. In his historical void image state, his body fully erupted into mad knowledge, expanding to swallow Nether Emperor Salinger. Mad knowledge, like bombs wrapped in mad pollution, along with information of fate and future, surged towards the original witch and Nether Emperor Salinger's body, mind, and spirit. All around, whether undead puppets or arcane behemoths, were assimilated by the mad knowledge, surging into a wilderness formed by knowledge. Nicola rapidly dissipated, entering Euclidean space to evade the hermit's suicidal attack. "How is it?" Nicola asked. Tang's lips curled slightly, it failed. Kike, that crazy woman, brought out the symbol of the catastrophe of destruction. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.